home
have
tour.
pictures.
We went to the home tour. There's a 72 foot house in Rapids. Builder building with a swimming pool. Absolutely. All log cabin.
I have two friends that have pools in their house.
Yeah,
Yes,
No.
and they're beautiful,
absolutely gorgeous.
but they have a lot more money.
Well, this is a young kid. He's like 30 years old. He's got 2 kids. One 4. And he's got this 72 square foot.
Hi, Ernie.
It's huge. It's
Hi, Dean.
And it's the middle of absolute nowhere.
Hey, did you see Sonny on the way up?
The tulip bushes got lost trying to find the tulip
Come
bushes.
here and eat that. How are you? We're about ready here.
Well, Sonny's not here by 5 after all.
You knew I'd respond back.
Oh, that's the lawnmower, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I ended up watching part of that BBW.
We're gonna talk about that.
Do they really need it?
No, that's not it.
Okay, it's 7 p.m. It's Wednesday, June 20th, 2012, and a hot Wednesday evening, and we'd like to call the Ways and Means Committee of Grand Traverse County to order. If you'd please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bonnie, would you call the roll call, please?
Commissioner Gilman,
I am here.
Inman,
Here?
Henschel,
Yes.
Lemkool,
Here.
Richardson,
Here.
Thomas,
Yep.
Max Bauer,
Here,
Wheelock, Police.
Present. Okay, Sonny will probably be along shortly. They haven't heard any different.
Only 180 days till the first day of winter.
Yep. Next item,
let's hold that thought, thank you.
next item is the approval of the minutes for May 16th, 2012, regular session.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Well, we have a new member amongst us tonight, and
Yes.
we would certainly like to welcome our new county administrator, Dave Benda.
Thank you.
Welcome, Dave, and we'll try and not pick on you too much. You got Dean sitting next to you there. Let him bear the brunt of it tonight.
Yeah, for every arrow, he's going to jump right in front of me.
Blame everything on him.
Okay.
He's even got a nameplate already. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
And they spelled his name right.
We hope you enjoy the job, and you'll find out we don't bite too hard. Most of us are toothless, so.
I look forward to working with you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the first public comment. Would you read the rules for the public comment, please?
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized, and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience wishing public comment? Georgia? Good evening.
Good evening. Georgia Durga, Director, Grand Traverse County Commission on Aging. I'd like to welcome Administrator Benda to Grand Traverse County and to Commission on Aging. I just wanted to give you an update. The Commission on Aging Board just finished their strategic plan, and we'll be providing you with a copy of that. We just finished our annual report, which is online, and you should have all gotten a postcard telling you where to go to look at that. And we are, on behalf of the Senior Center, requesting a Grand Traverse Band grant for $10,000 for tables and chairs, so I'm asking for your support in that. Oh, and we have one employee who's retiring, I believe it's July 1st, Don, and I won't say his last name. He's been with us 15 years, and besides his hard work, he's a home chore worker, he has not missed one day or called in or missed any time from working 15 years, other than scheduled vacation. So we wish him all the best. He's not here, but we wish him all the best, and we're having a little celebration for him next week. And so he'll be moving on to his farm. He has a farm.
And what day next week, Georgia?
June 26th, Tuesday morning at our garage at 7:30. He didn't want a big party, so we're having donuts and coffee. So that's what he wanted, so.
Thank you, Georgia.
Yep.
Is there anyone else desiring to speak in public comment? Seeing none, in the agenda tonight, under approval, B, conflict of interest letter has an error in it, and I passed out a corrected copy to each member. It says facilities, Grand Traverse County facilities, and it's actually Grand Traverse County Commission on Aging is the one making the purchase. So if you'd substitute the one on your desk for the one that's in page 11, we'll be all set. Next item is approval of the agenda.
So moved. As presented.
Oops. Bob?
Yeah, I had sent out a memo last night to all the commissioners indicating that MDEQ has responded to our amendment to the soil erosion sedimentation control ordinance. And I was hoping that the board could at least discuss that tonight. I was actually hoping that we could get final approval on the amendment. There were some suggested changes, not suggested, but required changes to the ordinance. And so I was hoping that we could at least discuss that. I just received the letter on Monday, and that's the reason why it didn't get in the packet.
We
Mr.
can
Chairman, I would
certainly,
move to add that to old
pardon?
business. I would move to add that to old business,
Okay.
Old or unfinished?
There's support for that?
unfinished.
Support.
You put it under old business, Sonny?
Unfinished business. I
Unfinished,
guess.
number 2, right?
So we really don't have old business on these agendas
All right.
anymore.
Okay, everybody understand the motion?
Mhm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous. Still need approval.
So approve the agenda. Yep, we need to go back to my motion. Yeah, move for approval as amended.
Okay.
I'll support.
Verbal supported, okay. All right, we're back where we should have been to begin with.
I was waiting for you to catch that.
Yeah. All right, well, I'll get around to it. It's hot tonight. All in favor of the motion to approve?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is unanimous. Special orders of business, I don't believe we have any. Would you read the consent calendar, please?
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval, is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. Number 1, grant application notification, GIS. Number 2, child care fund. Approval. Number 1, lawnmower purchase, Commission on Aging. Number 2, Lark Lawn and Garden letter of disclosure, acknowledge receipt. Number 3, accept RAP grant in the amount of $1,050, Grand Traverse Sheriff's Office. Number 4, budget adjustments.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience desiring to have something removed? Ernie?
That's item 1, please.
Item 1 of A?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Chris?
Item B1 and 2, please.
B what?
B1 and 2.
B1 and 2.
Okay. Anything else? We need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to approve the consent calendar as amended.
Yep. Support.
Okay.
That would be with the exceptions of A1.
Is there any discussion on that? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Lemko?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman?
Yes.
Please.
Yes. Okay, Ernie?
Ernie Kachalia, GIS Director for the county. Good evening, everyone. The reason I took that off the consent calendar is because I just wanted to notify the commission that we'd actually been awarded this grant now at this time. And apparently it's at your discretion, you could entertain a motion to accept it.
No, we can entertain a motion not to accept.
Or that.
I'll make a motion to accept the grant.
Who supported?
Ross. Okay, does everyone understand the motion, and does anyone have anything they want to discuss regarding that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous. Thanks, Ernie.
Thank you very much.
Chris, number
Yes.
one?
Mr. Chairman, I pulled that because I know that you need to abstain from that.
That's correct.
So I would move for approval to
Support.
purchase a mower from Lark Lawn and Garden.
Support.
Rob?
I'm going to abstain to this as the company I work for actually bid on this as well, so.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Henschel?
Abstain.
Lemko?
No.
Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Wheelock?
No.
Gilman?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Please.
Abstain. Okay, next item is...
That passed?
What's the
Yes,
vote?
five
Motion
two.
passes.
5-2.
Six votes
It
to
passed.
pass. I think it needs 6 votes, doesn't it?
No.
Oh,
No, this particular purchase isn't even required. If the Lark was owned by somebody other than myself, for example, it's next year, it wouldn't even come in front of the board because it's under the purchase amount. And because I'm a commissioner and I own the company, that's why it's in front of the board.
Yeah, this is not an item that requires a two-thirds vote.
No, I understand, but I just thought that because there was a, because there's a conflict of interest situation, that it took a 2/3 vote for that.
No, it's not in our
Could I
board
have a,
Yeah, it does require a two-thirds vote of the commissioners. I would point out that there's no requirement that Commissioner Henschel abstain in this case. This is a personal decision by him whether he feels he could be fair or not. I don't know whether Rob felt that he just couldn't be fair in voting on this, but there's no requirement because you're not in a contractual relationship with the county.
So does he want to, do you want to reconsider your vote?
I do not, thank you.
we already voted.
Ross?
I was just going to say, we already voted, so the motion did not pass.
So what was the count?
5-2.
The motion doesn't pass then.
Well, is it 2/3 of
Wait a
the
minute, it
meeting,
can't be
or-
5 to...
No, it's 2/3 of people sitting.
Two-thirds elected and serving.
Yeah, 2
That's nine.
abstain, 5-2.
That's 9 total.
Okay, Christine, B.
Again, I pulled that because I know that, Mr. Chairman, you need to abstain. So I would move to accept or approve your letter of disclosure.
Okay.
Second.
Been moved and supported to accept the letter of disclosure regarding the Commission on Aging's purchase. All in favor? Or roll call vote.
Commissioner Lemko?
Yeah.
Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas? Max Bauer?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Gilman?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Please.
Abstain. Okay, next item on the agenda is equalization, proposals for the equalization study of 2012 commercial and industrial classes. Bob?
This is this type of study and report is required for equalization in April of 2013. However, it must be done for the equalization director to measure the assessment levels in 2012. And actually, we need to start on it just as quick as we can, by the way, in order to get it done in time. The equalization director must use this study as the basis for recommended equalized values to be presented to the county board of commissioners. Assessors in the townships and cities need to have the ratios and values from the study as soon as possible in 2012 in order to establish assessments for 2012. They also need to have an opportunity to see the results as soon as possible in order to question the results. So when we do a study like this, we spend a lot of give and take time with the assessors to make sure that what we're finding is what they're finding, and give them a chance to critique what we are finding. It's a joint effort between them and the equalization department. We are contracting out for this part of this equalization study because of the unexpected death of the deputy equalization director. And ordinarily, this task has been done by him. Proposals were due June 1st of 2012 at 3 p.m. They were opened on June 5th, 2012. We did get some earlier proposals, and we rejected them because they failed to meet bid specs and also were for substantially higher prices, by the way. Proposals are as follows. Frischman Appraisal and Consulting, 43322 Joy Road, number 413, Canton, Michigan. They also have a Traverse City address. Their proposal was for a total cost of $45,950. The second proposal was from Amy Dehan, a Michigan Master Assessing Officer, a level 4. The Frischman appraisal, by the way, had 2 level 4s and 2 certified general appraisers assigned to it, and that was probably part of the reason why it was more expensive. It's a good group, but their price is quite high, and I don't think it'll do much better than in fact, probably not any better than the second proposal, which is a total cost proposal of $22,300. And the payments would be made as follows: $1,755 on signing, 4 payments of $3,510 due July 1, September 1, and October 1. On completion, additional payment of $2,250 for an optional sales study of commercial and industrial parcel in Garfield Township would be done on completion. We may do that Garfield study ourselves. It's a sales study. But we might also pay one of the people assigned to the contract to do it. We haven't decided that. That's an option. An additional charge is in the $22,300 for $2,500 in case there are any contingencies like larger parcel count than we anticipated on or some other difficulty. The bottom line, the ceiling on this proposal is $22,300. We have enough money in our budget to do this in the personnel budget, and my recommendation is to award the proposal to Amy Dehan for $22,300. It's a good professional proposal, and we had to we had to go through this twice, but we had a better proposal for less money. That's what it boils down to. Don't always get away with doing that, so. There's 147 commercial appraisals involved in this and 19 industrial and also sales studies in Garfield and Traverse City that would also be done as part of this. I think that covers the whole thing pretty well.
Sonny?
Mr. Chairman, I would authorize the contract with Amy Dehan for a total of $22,300 for the sales study, citing that it's the lowest bidder, along with the fact it's a local company.
Second.
Chris?
Mr. Chairman, the motion was to award the contract to Amy Dehan for a total of $22,300. I would ask the maker of the motion to rephrase that to say the total cost would not exceed $22,300.
Yeah,
I'll make
Because
that
it could
change.
come in less.
I will.
And
agree
it
with
might. There are some things that might come in less.
Sonny?
that. I will agree with that.
Okay. Get the motion? Any other discussion?
Just a question. Is this going to be affecting where we're going as far as next year's,
That's right,
for example, like East Bay, we're going to be talking about that again at some point.
right? This isn't, yeah,
This isn't a part of it right now.
oh, right.
But having the short staff situation, is that going to affect how we're going to be able to work with some of the townships?
It might, and by the way, I haven't covered that, but we do have applications for a deputy equalization director, and we've got some fairly good applicants.
Good.
So we're probably going to be able to address that issue fairly soon, but we're not ready to do that yet. There's still another week yet for applications. I think you have 9 applications so far. Which, well, anyway, that's good, we got 9 applications. We're probably going to get another 1 or 2.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous.
Thank you, fine folks.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
while he's here, I would just like to personally say thank you for his perseverance in helping one of my clients to take care of his challenge with the personal property tax. And so I just want to say thank you, Bob, for your work on doing that. So
thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And while we're at it, and I'll be sure to lavish on more praise, from what I've seen, the township's been very happy with the result, at least the ones that I'm associated with.
Appreciate that.
And we appreciate the work you're doing.
We work very hard to try and work with citizens and taxpayers. I think everybody knows that, and you fine folks too. Herb, if you hadn't brought that one item to my attention, I couldn't have fixed it. I had about a 5-day deadline. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, next item on the agenda is restricted funds, excess proceeds from foreclosure auctions. Bill?
Bill Rokas, Grand Traverse County Treasurer. This is the annual report that I present to you, showing how our auction proceeds are, and they're to be made available to the general fund. In past years, you've agreed to transfer these funds to the Housing Trust Fund. But as you can see, this year, it's actually a negative number. And next year's proceeds are also negative. On the second page, you'll see, so next year's report, there won't be any funds to transfer either. And there's 2 main reasons for that. In 2010, we demolished some structures and created a brownfield plan for those parcels. And we are going to start capturing those funds in 2012, this current tax year. And we have a receivable of just under $14,000 that we'll be capturing from those properties that have been sold since we've removed those structures. And then also, a lot of this depends on the actual sale date of the properties. And as you can see, the land bank sold, I believe it was 2 properties in January 2012 that were related to these tax years, and those proceeds totaled $55,000. And we have a couple more parcels that still have not sold that the land bank had taken. So even though these are negative numbers currently, if we were to accrue the stuff back, we would end up with positive sales. But on a cash basis, we had negative auction proceeds to transfer, so there'll be no transfer this year. Does anybody have any questions?
Sonny?
I guess the comment that I would make is, I've reported to you regularly that the Land Bank Authority, as part of their activities, have taken some of these blighted properties with dilapidated mobile homes or hazardous structures and cleaned that up, hauled the trash away, the debris away, and taken it away. That does cost money, and that does reflect into this. However, like Bill said, some of those properties we were able to put into a brownfield plan in Green Lake and Blair Township, and we will start recovering on the brownfield proceeds for those in 2012. So I think it's a case where your Land Bank Authority did a lot of great things for the neighborhood, and that they cleaned up these sites and then made them actually saleable lots. But there's going to be a little time delay till we see a profit for them.
Any other comments or questions for Bill? Thank you, Bill.
Mr. Chairman, should we receive and file this?
I don't know.
That's fine.
Just
I think
information.
it's a report that's required to be filed, so.
Okay. So you want to make a motion to receive and file?
Pardon?
You want a motion to receive and file?
We could, yes.
I'll do that.
Support. It's been moved and supported to receive and file the report. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous. Okay, next item is finance. Dean?
I'll be brief. The first item is our general fund trial balance through the end of May. We're starting off with just the trial balance, and then I go into the revenue by source and expenditure by function to compare our activity this year with last year. I've summarized the significant variances on page 23. The tax revenue, we're basically better off than we were a year ago because the tax tribunal adjustments are just simply less than they were at this time last year. That's the reason for the positive number there comparing the 2 years. The only other item that I'll mention here is the transfers in is down primarily due to the fact that our budget for the transfer in revenue is lower than it was. There are no significant variances with our budget, and these are, in most cases, they're all, explained here with the notes at the bottom of the page. The expenditure comparison, you'll note that we're actually year-to-date, the difference is greater than our revenue variance, which is a good thing. At this point in time, the expenditures are tracking within what was budgeted. I'm explaining the main reasons for those. Some of them are timing. Some are due to, the reduced budget 2012 versus 2011. There is nothing at this point in time that really causes me any great concern. And actually, I was happy going back to the revenues. The charges for services revenue category is showing improvement, and that's due to jail housing fees that are up and the increased activity in the Register of Deeds office from the recording fees and real estate transfer tax. So those, I think, are all good things at this point.
Herb?
Yeah, you talk about charges for services being up. Does that mean we're collecting that money, or is that just a charge?
These actually, during the year, this is a cash basis number as well, so we are collecting those amounts.
Because they always said that we collect so little of what we charge, and that's why I was asking that question.
In this range of revenue line items are the courts, the clerk, our general government, and there are signs that, those charges for services revenues are better than they were a year ago, so that's all positive.
Sonny?
Dean, when I read this, the thing that I kind of jumped out was the obvious timing thing in regard to the rent. We have an additional $448,000 coming in rent revenue, but I really didn't see where we had outstanding expenditures that would eat up that 440,000. So we're probably much better than even this looks, correct?
With the rent, I simply haven't invoiced, the internal functions for the rent. That's just
But
because
the
we're...
costs that are incurred for those facilities have already been made.
Yes and no. I mean, some of those costs are in another fund that the county general fund appropriates to. So, I mean, that will catch up over the course of the year. Most of those costs, Sonny, are in the facilities fund, which is not part of this.
Any other question or discussion regarding that? Still on, Dean.
The next item is our L4029, which is the form and the process that actually authorizes the county millage rate. The tax bills will be going out here early next week by all the local units, and our rate is the same rate that it has been for the past few years, and that is 4.9838 mils, and I'm asking for your approval of that millage rate.
Move for approval.
Support. Is there any other discussion on this matter? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous.
6.2 that we should be getting.
Okay, number 3, potential bond refunding or calls.
Okay, we're going to do this jointly. I apologize for the fact that we sent some of this information to you late today, but it's really hard to compile or summarize this information so it's easy to follow. But we have been requested by townships on 2 of our DPW, Board of Public Works, bond issues, and I think if Bill doesn't mind, we'll take this one item or one bond issue at a time, and we're going to start with, it's our Fund 336, it's the 2003 series, so the work paper that you would look at is, it has a $3.2 million number, $3,215,000 amount on the top. This is a series 2003. The townships that issued these bonds, or where these projects were done, are indicated. It's Acme, East Bay, and Peninsula. Real quick, the format here is that our bond counsel, our financial advisor, has run an analysis of what a refunding would look like on this issue. And if you concentrate or focus on the numbers down at the bottom, this refunding would generate an actual dollar savings of $295,000 approximately, and present value savings of $252,630. And if you want to actually see how those numbers are compiled or calculated, if you roll through this, there's the first page is the new debt service, which is what they anticipate that the new bond issue, the refunding bonds, would look like. And then they compare that to the original debt service. And then you also have to, it's a case of looking at the fiscal totals on each of those pages, subtracting out one versus the other, and then will be part of this original bond issue that's not part of the refunding. But the bottom line is, with this particular bond issue, it does show that from a refunding, that there would be not only actual dollar savings, but present value savings. And I think I'll let Bill
Yeah,
jump
just
in
to
here.
add in, these bonds are callable on November 1st of 2012. And I've talked to the 3 townships. Acme actually has some funds that they would actually like to contribute to reduce the borrowing amount. But what we're anticipating doing is that the townships would approve the resolution at their next meeting next month. Then it would go to the DPW, and then it would come back to this county board for final approval to do the refunding. So that's method that it has to go. It has to be approved by the township first, then to the DPW and to the county. And the county is would have to approve this because we do have our full faith and credit attached to this bond issue.
And if I could add, in this particular case, Bill and I are both recommending that we would refund these bonds rather than call, because it allows us to retain our cash for other potential uses. The next issue...
Can you, I'm having trouble trying to track that.
Track?
That you're going to refund the bonds rather than calling them?
We're going to call them in an...
We're going to actually issue another bond issue. We could use, or with the county, as we've done with a couple of East Bay bonds, the county actually loaned some funds to the township, and then we actually called the bonds. We didn't reissue the bonds, we actually just used some funds to call them.
Just to be clear, though, we're going to, as you said, one of the townships is interested in putting some more money towards it. So ultimately refinancing, or refunding it, but rather
reducing the amount.
A reduced amount. Anyway.
Yeah, some of these, Peninsula has indicated that they didn't have cash to reduce theirs, and East Bay as well. But Acme thought they might be able to come up with some cash to reduce their share of the refunding. And that could be incorporated when we do the refund.
Along with Garfield?
Garfield's not in this bond issue.
That's the next issue.
Well, I think it's important to note that the savings to the taxpayers in Acme Township is projected to be $29,000, to East Bay Township is $199,000, and to Peninsula Township, $67,000. Well, those are significant savings to the taxpayers of our community.
And that's real money.
Done deal.
The next issue is our Fund 339, and we carry all of these funds in our general ledger. Bill makes the required debt service payments. This is affecting Garfield and Peninsula Township. It's their Series 2004 bonds. When you look at this in terms of a refunding, the savings, not only the actual net savings and the present value savings, are quite a bit less than the first issue that we looked at. And the consideration with this is the fact that it does cost money to issue a new series of bonds. And we're kind of weighing that against, I mean, does it justify the savings to incur that cost? I mean, you have to go through and the bonds, our credit has to be rated. There's a cost from our bond counsel and our financial advisor to prepare all of the required documents. And with savings in this range, when you factor those costs in, you're not looking at as significant, a bottom line, basically. So this is one that we were thinking that we might want to consider calling rather than refunding. And Bill, in discussing this with Garfield, I believe they have the cash to cover their portion of the call.
Yeah, Garfield wants to actually call their whole portion on this bond issue, which would just leave Peninsula, this is a 60-40 split bond issue between Garfield and Peninsula. And if Garfield just calls their portion, there's probably not enough savings for Peninsula to do the refunding. So what I did is made an analysis similar to what we've done when we did East Bay's, and to call this issue completely, the county would have to loan Peninsula Township $693,000 to do the call. And based on that call, I've made an estimate that the county would probably make $60,000 and Peninsula would save $30,000. They'd still be, we'd basically have a loan with Peninsula, just like we did with East Bay. We restructured the agreement that's in place between the township and the county.
Chris?
Didn't I hear from one of the commissioners at a recent meeting that Peninsula has a better bond rating than the county does?
Yes, they do.
I'm not sure that's true. They may have issued a bond and got a AAA rating, but if they did, they probably purchased insurance to back that, to get that AAA rating. Their rating on their own will not be better than the county rating.
Different playing field.
I appreciate that explanation, thank you.
But- And also, Commissioner, that wouldn't necessarily mean that they have cash to do this.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Jason?
Two questions. Do we have it? And then second is, what are we earning on it right now, where it's at?
Right now, what we're earning, the most I'm earning on any investment right now is about 1%. Most of the funds are less than that now. We've been in this low market for about 3 years now.
Okay.
And all the investments that have earned higher returns have been called or rolled over into a lot less earning interest.
So if we were to do it, we could do it at a lower cost to them and also be better for our investments.
Yeah, I would recommend that the rate be 3.5% that we would charge them, which that rate generates them the same amount of savings that they would have if we could have refunded this for them. So that's how I came up with the 3.5%.
Herb?
Bottom line, where does the county sit on after we do all this?
This is just strictly a use of cash. It affects our cash flow, but it's funds that I would have to invest, and Dean can...
I mean, I'm talking about our liability. You know, we've got our name on all these bonds. Does some of this, doing this, take our name off some of these bonds so that we are not liable for?
Well, this bond would actually go away because we'd call the whole bond.
Right.
Garfield would call their share. We would
an asset.
help Peninsula call their share. But we basically swap the, instead of having this bondholders that we owe them.
For how much?
$693,000.
But I mean, we are going to get rid of how much debt when we do all this?
Well, for Peninsula, $693,000. It's just
Well, I
a
know,
swap.
it's 690, and we're going to get rid of all of Garfield's
Yeah,
debt.
Garfield
That we would be
is,
responsible.
Well, the total between the two would
Is
be the
1,205,000. And over the last 2 or 3 years, we've gotten rid of a lot of county debt because it's been a lot more beneficial to pay off that debt than to carry it.
Pay the high
And-
interest.
But the thing is, we can't call the debt until it's callable, and
Right.
these become callable on November 1st of this year. So
So when we get done with all this, the county's debt for the septic treatment plant will be how much money?
this has nothing to do with the
That's nothing to do
septic
with
treatment.
That's the next item.
That's the next one.
We'll get to
You're one ahead of
Hang in there.
This is water and sewer project.
Oh, this is water and sewer.
And-
Okay.
and- and we
I'm
can-
sorry. Okay.
We wanted to have a discussion
That's where I was
first
getting confused.
because
I was jumped ahead.
we can do
Yeah.
a better job of summarizing this for you, for the official actions that need to be done. But I wanted to add, last year, we assisted East Bay Township in calling 2 bond issues. The total of those 2 debt issues was $1,010,000, and those were outright calls. East Bay Township is repaying that obligation to the county. They've paid in more than they had planned. We have received $305,000 of that back this year. So, I mean, those funds that were made available to them to call the bonds are coming back in. And the concern, Commissioner Lemkool, if I'm reading this right, is what's our capacity to do this? Number one, we have to have the cash. And then after that, it's how is this accounted for in our general fund or in our financial statement? We are somewhat, we do have a restraint in our general fund, and that's obviously our fund balance, because when we make these loans to the townships, it's an asset in our general fund, but it's a reserved amount of fund balance. So we can't exceed our fund balance, and we do have capacity to do this. Then there are also some cash flow considerations, but we do have cash that we invest to earn some rate of return. And I think at this level, we're pretty comfortable that we can do this. However, we still have the septage bond issue that we need to consider before we, go too far with this. And that would be the next item. And this is where it's really hard. We have all kinds of summaries. We've had John Axe run different scenarios, and the last thing that I provided, I thought just for purposes of discussion, to give you what our current debt service is on the septage treatment bonds. There are two series of bonds that were issued. The first was issued in 2003, and then the smaller issue was done a year later. So what this analysis does is it schedules out by year the remaining principal and interest payments on those two bond issues, and then the far right is a summary of the two bonds combined. These were 20-year bonds, so they had a short, in terms of a bond, that's kind of a short payment. But the larger bond is callable on November 1st, which means of this year. The smaller bond is callable next November 1st. But when you look at this, it's important to point out that when you look at the far right, it shows that the debt service over time, as the principal increases, the interest is decreasing, but your debt service is, it's pretty consistent year after year. But this is an issue that we have in our septage fund. When you carry this debt load, it's hard for the operations to cover the expenses and the debt load, and we've had this discussion numerous times before. And the other thing I would add is just what the rates are on these bond issues. For the larger bond, if you could write this down, from beginning to end, it was 2% was the starting interest rate, going out to 4.4%. So it increases over time, and that's generally what happens. For the smaller debt, it's 3.05 to 5.0%. And the remaining term on these bonds, which is 2012 through 2023 for the larger issue, we're currently at 3.375, increasing to the 4.4. The smaller issue, we're currently for 2012 at a 3.9% rate, increasing to 5. One of the issues with the refunding on these bonds is when you run the numbers, because the interest rates were higher towards the end, later years, and we're not even, we're kind of at that midway point, I believe. We're 10 years into this, that's why you have a call date. But the interest rates are higher in that last 10 years, so the savings from a refunding are not necessarily there. And you can run those calculations, and you're not seeing,
Well, there's savings there, it's just not as great as with some of those, the last two bond issues had higher interest rates. These, when we sold these bonds, actually were pretty decent rate at the time we sold these. So it has a less net interest cost to begin with, so when we refund them, we're not going to see the total savings that we were on these other bonds. But there are savings.
Now, you're talking about the possibility of refunding these? Or are we looking at cost sharing between the townships and the county? Where are we getting this money from?
Well, that's what's, Bill and I, it's hard for us to bring anything concrete to you because we really haven't explored those options with the townships. I'm hearing that, I talked to one of the supervisors this morning, and they're looking at what they can contribute to either a call, well, most likely it would be a call to pay these bonds down, but that is, in most cases, that's a case where you're taking, paying down this debt and exchanging it for other debt on their general, in their financial statement. So we really need to have that discussion. We know what we can do internally, but it's a question of what what's the plan? Are we going to work together on this, or are we going to?
Chris?
Well, I think we need to address this sooner rather than later. It's June, and November isn't that far off. I would like to have a meeting. I know we've had meetings before where we've invited the, townships, all the townships, but I think this meeting has to be with the 5 guaranteeing townships, and I think we need to have a meeting and have this discussion, and I think we need to have it soon. We need to know where everybody's going. We need to all be on the same page quickly.
Sonny?
Well, I guess my point is a little bit exactly that. This $5.6 million is not county debt. It is debt that is held by the 5 guaranteeing townships. Grand Traverse County sold the bonds for them. We did the financing for them, but it is truly their debt. We have documents in place that say that they are responsible to make those payments.
They are, but we also have our full faith and credit on
I
this.
understand that.
So we are
That is why we're still
as well.
having the discussion.
That's correct.
Because it would be very easy if we did not have county full faith and credit into that bond rating to say, okay, it's your debt, you deal with it. But, I don't think that's the best thing for those townships, and I don't think it's the best thing for our community as a whole. So, I'm like Chris, I'd like to get this discussion as soon as possible with those guaranteeing townships. And, I don't know, we all know that they're calling the shots as far as the DPW, whether they do the special assessment district, and, we've heard all kinds of rumors. So I think rather than hearing the rumors that are running around the community, I'd like to get those 5 guaranteeing townships in here and talk to us.
Yeah,
Chris?
Well, I think it's extremely important to understand that we're all in this together. The county, bottom line, well, the county's money is at risk, as are the 5 guaranteeing townships, and we need to work together. And I don't want an adversarial relationship. I don't want us versus them. I want us to go into this seeking the best solution for this problem, and it is a problem, and we've got it. And my husband says he refers to the speed of government as glacial speed, and he's right. We need to go sooner. I just can't stress how I feel a sense of urgency about this. So how soon can we get a meeting together?
Well, I can address that.
Larry?
Just to let everyone know that the 5 townships and the non-green townships have been practically having meetings weekly and scheduling discussion about how they're going to come up with hopefully a consensus among all the townships about what they'd like to recommend to the Board of Public Works. And so they've indicated to me that they're close to doing that, and I said, well, what we need to do is have a meeting with the Board of Commissioners, so we have an understanding of where you're going to go with this thing and what you're going to ask us to do, and that needs to occur fairly quickly, so they know that. So I will get back with the supervisors of the 5 townships and see where they're at. The other thing is that, timing-wise, we were hoping that Dave would be on board prior to the recommendation coming in, so, his strength is financial background, and he would be able to have a second eye on exactly what is being proposed and see if he comes up with any different solutions or recommendations. So I will get with the 5 townships, and then hopefully they've got a consensus, and I'll get a meeting coordinated. So,
Chris?
When can we expect a meeting date, and how soon?
Well, what I'd like to see is, the boards, we've met with them plenty. We spent a whole year with the Finance Committee, better than a year.
Yes.
What I'd like to see, unless Bill and Dean had other ideas, is let them meet. Now, they know exactly what we can do and what we can't do as a county monetarily, okay? I'd like to see them meet, and I've talked to some of the supervisors of the Guarantee and 5 separately. I'd like to see them meet with the Guarantee and 5 supervisors, come to a consensus amongst 7 people, and then the supervisors can go back to their boards and maybe the other townships, and they can come back to us. I think that's the quickest and the fastest and the most prudent way of doing it. Because we can have a meeting. We've had a lot of them meetings, and what have we accomplished? Unless Mr. Benda can railroad something that we haven't thought
He's got a
about,
magic
which
wand.
I think he'd have to get up real early in the morning to do that, but, you know, I think that's what we
Welcome.
need to do. Is that a possibility, Bill and Dean?
It's a possibility. I mean, I'd do anything. You gotta realize that the county board would have to pass a resolution either next month in August, maybe, at the very latest. But once again, these 5 townships have to pass a resolution prior to the county board, and then the DPW has to pass it. And with November 1st, I mean, you got to notify bondholders, you got to have at least 60 days prior to that to have this all wrapped up and approved by all these bodies. So time is of the essence.
The freight train is
If-
going down.
if you
I
want-
think we've
Let's
got-
have a meeting,
we've
please.
got the 2 masters of the money. They know exactly what they got to do. They know what the fine timelines are. They can express that, and the Guarantee and Townships know they're going to come back and report to us. But I think them 2 with the 5 supervisors can get it
If
done
we can
quicker
manage
than any
it,
other board.
if we can manage it, the 9 of us can remain silent during the meeting, but I think we need to be there.
Silent.
I mean, if we're not there, we're silent. I mean, but
She speaks of physics.
Well, I would have the utmost
I just don't
trust.
think, I just don't believe if the 2 of them are there without us, there's not going to be a sense of urgency. And I feel a sense of urgency.
Well, here's sort of what's going on, from my understanding from the last discussion, is that what they may be looking at and recommending might be totally different than what the 5 townships want us to consider. I mean, they might be looking at just taking the current balance and lowering the rate for the same term. The guaranteeing townships might want to just take the balance due and repackage it and send it back over 20 years and cut the debt service in half. And so, I think that's what they're going to come in and potentially ask for. I'm not guaranteed of that, but I think that's one of the options they're looking at. So, and it's a political decision on our part, a financial and a political decision on our part if we want to do that, because we would be doing it back in our county name and taking the balance and taking it out another 20 years. So that's a decision that we would have to make as a board. So I wouldn't want to throw that on Dean and Bill.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess my concern about extending it out is that we're putting the county on for another 20 years, and I just have a real problem with that. But the other thing is that when you start looking at an assessment, the longer they put that out, the lower the assessment can be. The shorter that they do the bond, the larger the assessment's going to be. So I think, there's a challenge there, because that assessment's going to be on there as long as the bonds are there to be called.
The assessment can only be for 5 years.
Right.
That's the longest it can be.
5 years?
And
That's all they can do is 5 years?
They have to renew it.
But then they have to go back and renew it. Yeah.
Mr. Rokas, a minute ago, you mentioned a rate we've been earning on county monies. You said it was, what, did you say 1.5 currently?
One.
One?
Or half.
Or
less.
1 or less.
What is, just top of your head guess, I won't hold you to this, what is like a 10-year average of that number? What's normal?
Normal now?
I'm a
what is the
long-term
new
thinker.
normal? The new
We don't know
normal
what
is,
that is. 10-year
the
average.
10-year treasury is less than 3% right now.
Less than 3, thank you.
Honey?
Well, in case you're curious, Chris, I don't do silent very well. Might as well clear that up right off the bat. Right off the bat. I guess the point about it is, first, I don't think we can do anything until those 5 townships make their decision and go to the Board of Public Works. Because this is a Board of Public Works issue and those 5 townships issue. The county is strictly the facilitator of the financing. I think they have to get their stuff together. We can do everything we can to stress this sense of urgency, but until they make their decision, I don't think we can do anything. And as far as sending Dean and Bill to carry that to them, it's not their job. It's not. That's our job. You know, but I think what we need to do is stress the urgency to them, but we cannot do anything with this project until those 5 townships decide what they're going to do and get the Board of Public Works to deal with it. Because don't forget, you know, whether they do the special assessment, whatever, that's not a county issue. That's an issue by the Board of Public Works.
And they have to have 2 public hearings before they can do that.
I know that. And August is not that far away, and Bill would like an answer by the end of August, I'm sure.
I don't think you get it by then.
You know, Sonny, I guess I don't understand, and Chris, what makes you think us meeting with them is going to expedite anything?
I don't. I want them to.
We have a proven
They take
track
care of it, we
record
do it.
of no action. Absolutely no action. And I'll tell you, it's the money managers and the supervisors that if they can convince their boards of a plan of action with the help of these 2 individuals, perhaps then we can move forward. Otherwise, I think another meeting is fruitless. I really do. And we can't make that decision. It has to be, like Sonny said, the 5 guaranteeing townships and the BPW.
And understand, I'm not suggesting any meeting until those 5 townships and the Board of Public Works make us a decision. Because another round-robin discussion with them about this issue, which we've done on at least a dozen occasions over the last 10 years, does us absolutely no good unless they are prepared to make a decision.
Ross?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree that, you know, until they decide what they want to do, there isn't any point in getting together with them. I mean, when I first got on the board 3.5 years ago, we wasted 1.5 years and couldn't come to any, really. I mean, the path was clear then, and they couldn't make any decision. And now they let it go, and now we're in the middle of an election year, and they still can't decide. I mean, we do know, I mean, from what when I watch the meetings on TV and stuff, it seems like they want to refinance because they're going to save some money on that. But I think we need to wait for a proposal from them before we try to get together and, you know, hammer it out.
You know, we do have a new kid on the block, Mr. Benda.
I'll be happy to. Well, my suggestion right now would be to put together the timeline for the last date that the board could take action and still get to market with the bonds, with the new bonds, if there's going to be them, new bonds. And work backward from there when the Board of Public Works has to take action, when the townships boards have to take action, and just give them that timeline. Here's you have an opportunity. This is the timeline you've got to meet in order to do it. You know how fast you've got to run in order to make the deadline. And that's pretty much all you can really do right now. They have to actually take the actions.
I like that idea.
Get her done. Not a chance. Get her done.
Gilman.
Anybody else? Jason?
I'd just like to point out, we do have a vested interest in what happens with the G5 too, though. I mean, there is, you know, we may not have a lot of say in what they decide to do, but we're going to live with a lot of the results of what they decide to do. And how we interface with them is going to be kind of important. I think it's probably not a bad idea, even though nobody really wants to get their fingers in it because they don't want to take any of the blame for some of the bad stuff that's going to happen if it goes south. But I say put your creative caps on and maybe come up with some different ideas and different approaches and ways to solve this problem, because obviously in the last 1.5 years there hasn't been a hell of a lot of action. I mean, there's been, you know, some, but there hasn't been a significant solution provided for what we know is coming. I mean, you know, D-Day is upon us here, or Judgment Day, I think, is more apt. And there are people in the county who aren't a part of the G5 that are worried that they're going to see an assessment, and there are people in the G5 that thought at once upon a time they were going to make money on the whole project. And by golly, the risk is everybody else's downfall now. Well, that's the reality of it in a way, because if it comes back in some way and affects the county's credit rating because one of these townships falls out, or because somebody doesn't make a bond payment on time, we're in trouble in a lot of different ways. So, I mean, it affects us all the way down. And the entire county's involved, whether they like it or not at this point. So.
Chris?
If they do nothing, which has been their pattern, what are we going to do? And I understand, and I'm hearing from fellow commissioners that they don't feel another meeting is going to be productive. I think it will matter, but I've been in the minority before. What I would suggest is we at least send a letter and stress what we feel is a sense of urgency. In a letter, we don't have to have a meeting, but, and then the bottom line is, if they do nothing, what are we going to do?
Ross?
It's a question for Bill and Dean. Is this a one-time opportunity, or are they callable?
They're callable.
Starting November 1st?
They're callable
ongoing?
starting November 1st and then every 6 months after that.
Every 6 months, okay. So if
They're
for some reason...
callable on the interest and the principal.
So for some reason we dilly-dallied and didn't make November 1st.
We could do May 1st.
We could still do it May 1st.
Good question.
That is a good question.
Your savings just dwindles.
Yeah, your
each
savings
time.
dwindles.
No, I understand that. I just didn't know if it was a one-time deal and,
No, it's
you know,
continual.
take advantage now or forever hold your peace kind of thing.
Dick?
Well, to answer Chris, I think a meeting is important too, but I don't think we need to be in any hurry. We should let them take their steps towards the direction they're going now. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in a few minutes, but yeah, I think we should get together with them. I think it's very important, but I think it's too soon because we'll be asking questions that they don't have answers for.
Ross?
Can we, I don't know if we need formal action on this, but can we at least take our administrator's suggestion and have someone prepare a timeline so that it's clear?
I can get that to you tomorrow.
Great.
Okay,
Right,
thanks.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with sending them a timeline that says, in order to refund this on November 1st, you know, we're going to have action, we're going to have this to the county board by September 1. If the DPW does not make their decision, and the 5 townships don't make their decision by September 1, Grand Traverse County is not going to be prepared to do it. Or you pick the date, Bill, but if I'm back in 60 days off, I'm saying we have to have it to us to vote on by September 1st or very close there.
Last meeting in August.
Probably.
Yeah.
Bill and
That
Dean,
gets
do
it down to
you, I
get-
have one
get the
question.
townships about 3
Do you
weeks.
guys have any idea how to solve this dilemma? No, seriously.
We have some ideas, but I think we should discuss those with Dave first, in fairness to him.
Thanks.
And the other thing,
As long as it doesn't include the delinquent tax fund.
Now I got one hand tied behind my
That one
back.
right off the list.
We will bring back on the first two issues that we discussed, our Fund 336, the Series 2003 and the Series 2004, the action items at Ways and Means next month. So you'll see that to start that refunding and call process.
That next week or next month?
No, next month, Ways and Means.
Because it would have to be approved at those townships first and the DPW before it comes back to the board.
We want to make sure you know we're coming back on those for sure.
Any other question of Dean and Bill? Thank you. And if you two had some ideas, wanted to meet with Dave, we would appreciate it. Okay, next item on the agenda would be unfinished business, the 2%.
You have the unrestricted thing for the number 4. Well, they were talking, you didn't mention the restricted funds, did you? On the Second Street plan about
That's what
the
we
township
just
paying?
talked about.
Well, no, you talked about the solution in the meeting. He didn't talk about the shortfall of the
The
79,000.
deficit elimination plan that we are required.
Don't forget about me. That's next.
Okay, see?
That's, yeah.
Again, I feel like I'm the bearer of bad news, but I couldn't report this sooner because I had to be sure that I had final numbers from our auditors, and I got those Thursday, Friday of last week. And the bottom line here, when you look at the financial statement, the balance sheet, which is page 28 in your report, second column is the septic facility. And despite the fact that we have a positive net assets figure, the state, I did not provide it here, but this year they changed, they actually formalized the deficit elimination plans. It's their number letter 2012-1, and they do a calculation. And basically you look at the components of the net assets and they ask, do you have a deficit in any of the components? That's step 1, and well, yes, we do.
Cash.
Then step 2 is you compare the current liabilities to the current assets, and that's also a negative number. And then basically you're comparing those two, and a deficit elimination plan has to be submitted for the smaller of the two. And the seriousness of this is the fact that the rules have changed over the past 2 years where the deficit elimination plan has to be submitted concurrent with our filing of our annual audit report. That's due to the state on June 30th. So we have to actually cover this between now and then. And it actually, a cash advance doesn't work. We've had this discussion before. It has to be an outright appropriation to this fund with a board resolution and copies of the journal entries showing that the transaction has been recorded. I can provide you with that information.
My understanding is that we're just going to send a bill to the townships and they were going to pay it, and there was no deficit at the end of the end of the cycle.
I'm not sure when we had that discussion.
Yeah, we had that discussion.
To this point, the resolution has been concerning, I believe, cash deficits?
No. We were going to send, we're on record, we're sending them a bill for that, for the shortfall, and the township said they would agree to pay it. They just need a bill.
Because they got reimbursed all the money from the lawsuit.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to take a look at that. I'm not recalling it to be written in that.
That's where it was left, is
I believe the last time we visited that, it was concerning or addressing the cash deficit.
We went beyond that. Yeah, they agreed that they would pay any shortfall before that.
Well, if you have that in place, that's what we will do.
We need to send them a bill.
Chris?
Well, that's just what I was going to say. Perhaps tomorrow.
Well, trust me, it's my top priority because it has to be done.
And Dean, if you send the townships a bill, then can that be reflected in this report? I mean, even if they have the bill and they haven't paid it.
Well, that's a plan.
No.
It's a plan? Yeah,
No,
right.
No, we need a plan. I mean, it says we need a plan.
Our books are closed for December 31st. I mean, this will be a current year transaction that specifically states that it's to cover the prior year deficit. I mean, the transaction that's recorded will be done in 2012, but it will be recorded in such a fashion that it says that it's covering the deficit.
When you send the letter to the townships, which I understand you're going to do tomorrow, will you give them a date as to when we need to receive the money?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, then my question would be is do we still need to appropriate the money ourselves now, put the money in to eliminate the deficit, and then basically demand to be reimbursed by the townships.
We have our board meeting next week. I need to revisit the resolution, and if we have that in place, that should solve this fairly easily. The timing of when the cash comes in, I'm not overly concerned about that. I mean, I can record a receivable. I can record a transaction that makes this work, provided I know that I've got a valid amount due from the townships.
Did we pass a formal resolution?
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest, Mr. Chairman, that you do take formal action on Commissioner Richardson's suggestion that the board direct administration to prepare a letter.
Ross, would you like to?
You're saying to formally appropriate the $70,241?
No. Directing administration as far as what they should do, and that is to prepare a timeline for the townships to act.
On this particular item?
I'm sorry.
That's what's throwing me.
I'm sorry, I'm going back to the previous conversation.
Oh, okay.
Nobody saw me raise my hand before.
You got to wave.
You got to get above your screen, Bob. You know, you kind of hide behind that thing.
Okay, well, can we come back to that in a minute? Because
Sorry.
that's fine. I was a little confused. So what do we need? So what you're saying, Dean, is we can deal with this all in a week. Meanwhile, you want to find the supporting documentation that says that we told the townships that they owed the money if there was a deficit.
That's the first thing I want to do tomorrow, and if we have that in place, my only concern would be is if they've actually agreed to that. I know that's the action we most likely took at this level, but there again, that's our action, and that's not necessarily what they've agreed to do. Because I know for the last couple of months, they've been putting an agreement together, a reimbursement agreement, because we have one township that wouldn't reimburse us for the cash advance that they were supposed to, because there's no formal agreement in place. So this is not that easy, but I think we can work it out in the next week.
But yet it is their responsibility, is it not?
It is. You can always go back to your operating agreement that we have with the local units.
I mean, anything we've chipped in has been out of the goodness of our hearts, right?
Always, yes. Well, I'll work with Dave, and we'll get this figured out.
Okay, do you need a motion tonight, Dean?
No, I have sufficient direction to proceed.
Okay, then going back to the previous issue on the refinancing of the bonds, I will make a motion, if it's okay with the chair, that to direct staff to create a timeline on what the procedure would be for refinancing bonds or refunding the bonds that are due on the septic facility, and transmit that timeline to the guaranteeing townships and the Board of Public Works.
Support. Everybody understand the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous.
I have a remark on the last conversation.
Larry?
Yes, I'll work with the administrator and Dean on that background information, and if we cannot find something that is sufficient to address future shortfalls, then I'll place on the agenda that item so we can address it and take care of it at the next meeting. We can actually do a motion and a resolution to correct it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, now we're at unfinished business, 2% tribal grants. Mr. Cooney and Inman, I guess.
Bob, you want to go with your?
I guess what I've done in response to the county's action last week is I have talked to I've talked to Commissioner Inman, I've talked to Tribal Chairman Al Fidwaden, I've talked to the tribe's council, and I've also talked to the folks at the Indian Gaming Commission, Lansing, or excuse me, the Michigan Gaming Commission. And I have to agree with Dean that the county should be concerned about the current arrangement that we have with the tribe. And I say that because, as you discussed last week, the money that we're receiving from the tribe, it is receipted in on the books. The payments are made by the county. The auditors are certainly looking at this as county money, and that's why we're being questioned about it. And then there's the fact that the county is required to only make lawful expenditures of public funds. And even though obviously there's a lot more to the way that we're receiving the money than simply revenue, as we normally see it, the county does have to make expenditures that are lawful, and generally expenditures to 501c3 corporations or nonprofit organizations are not a valid public purpose, no matter how worthy the organization may be. And of course, as Commissioner Richardson pointed out at last week's meeting, I think we all know the original intent. If you read the stipulation, which governs in this case the 2% grant money, the purpose of the 2% money was for the tribe to make a determination of which local units of government should receive the 2% funding to reimburse them for services that may be impacted by a tribal casino, police, fire, those types of things. And it doesn't matter which unit of government it goes to. It could be a school, it could be the county, it could be a township or village. I believe that is the original intent. The problem here is that the state has tacitly, I wouldn't say accepted, but they haven't done anything about the fact that a lot of the tribes, the 7 tribes from the 1993 compact, have given grant funds to 501c3 corporations. They've done it in a number of different ways. They all seem to have their own procedures. But the state is the only entity that has the power to do anything about that. And that is for the governor to bring suit against a tribe arguing that the 2% money isn't going where it should. And they have chosen not to do that, at least since 1993. I say the state has not necessarily approved of the ways 2% grants are being spent. The Michigan Gaming Commission certainly believes that the funds should be going to local units of government. At least when I spoke to Dave Hicks, that was his position. And the way he views this situation is that the county should be making the final determination of where the grant money goes to if we are going to be in receipt of the funds. I guess I have a couple of different recommendations about what you could possibly do, and I tried to look at what is the remedy, what is the concern here if we continue with the present situation. Obviously, we haven't really had a complaint. I suppose, when I was talking to Dean about this, the state could take some action. Maybe they have the power to withhold revenue sharing funds. I don't know about that. The other thing is a taxpayer action could be brought, and those taxpayer actions have been brought, not in relation to 2% grants, but they have been brought in the past against government entities when they make unlawful expenditures of public funds. The result there is that these organizations that are receiving the grant funding, maybe they've spent the money already, and then the taxpayer brings an action, and that money has to be refunded. So, I suppose those are the possible, maybe not likely, but possible outcomes. And then, of course, there's the fact that the county board is a fiduciary with a duty to the taxpayers of Grand Traverse County to make sure that all money that comes into the county is spent for a lawful public purpose. My opinion is that making the current, I did review the list of grant applications from December 29th, 2011 round, and I did note a number of nonprofit organizations on that list. There are also some grants to the county, the Traverse Health Clinic, the Resource Recovery Department. So, there are some valid grants here. But I guess my advice would be that you have a couple different routes to go here. We could discuss with the tribe giving the county ultimate authority about where the money is spent. If we're going to be the fiduciary for the money and handle it that way, the county should be able to determine what is a valid public purpose. Is there a specific statute that authorizes the expenditure of the funds? And can we make this, can we lawfully make that grant of money? The problem I see with that is that, the tribe may not agree to that. The other problem I see is that because there are other units of government that may be able to make expenditures that the county cannot make, it may make more sense that this money go through a township or a village or a city government, because I believe those municipal entities have more discretion to make expenditures than county government does. The other suggestion, and this is something, again, you could discuss with the tribe. There are 4 tribes that entered into compacts with the governor in 1998, and in those cases, they created what's called a revenue sharing board, comprised of usually a county, a township, and one other municipality that's chosen by those other 2 entities. There are different structures, but the revenue sharing board has the ultimate authority over who gets the money. Again, it's got to be for a lawful government purpose, but that would be another way to go, and maybe that's something that the tribe would be willing to consider. The other suggestion was Commissioner Wheelock's motion to just hand back the money and the grant applications to the tribe. Problem is it puts the money at risk, I guess, as far as the money that the county does receive from the tribe. Maybe they tell the county, well, your grant application just went to the bottom of the pile. I don't know, but and so those would be the 3 different options that you have. But I don't think I wouldn't recommend that the current situation continue. And so the other thing you should keep in mind is that the stipulation or the compacts are set to be renegotiated in 2013 because they expire. My guess is that the revenue sharing boards will probably be recommended by the state as probably the way to go here. And so, this whole situation could resolve itself next year. So that's all I have, and if there are any questions.
Well, obviously, I've been a little outspoken about this issue for 10 years, so I probably won't be quiet tonight, too. So, But I think, you know, the biggest concern that I've always had is the idea that I've always believed in, and Bob's reconfirmed it tonight, the purpose of that money was for a government purpose, you know, or a public purpose, I should say. And the fact that the tribe has always had the sole discretion how the money was distributed, and, you know, then in 2009, when they came along and decided Grand Traverse County needed to be the fiscal agent for the distribution of that money, that's where it really came down on us, that we were responsible to handle that money. And, you know, as Bob and Dean both have told us, all of a sudden, we're receiving that money. Now it is public Grand Traverse County money, and we're distributing it to nonprofit organizations at not even at our discretion of where the money went. The tribe told us where the money went, but yet we were responsible to audit that it was properly spent. And the best indication we have is a letter that, yep, we spent the money where we told you we were going to spend it. You know, we have no proof to that effect other than a letter. So that's always been an issue, you know, and that's why last week my recommendation was that we forward all of the applications to the tribe without preference, and advise the tribe that we would not be the fiscal agent for this round of grants.
Is that a motion?
I made that motion last week.
Oh.
You need a motion.
I wasn't here.
You know,
You have to have a motion.
I would move, we already moved the applications to them. They've already been sent. I would move that we notify the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa Chippewa Indians that we will not be the fiscal agent for the June-July grant cycle.
Support.
I guess a couple points. One is, that was included in your first motion. It failed, so I think by our board rules, this would take a 2/3 vote to pass. Second one is, when I talked to David Hicks, who is the manager of the auditing portion of the Michigan Control Board, or Gaming Board, Dave, you know, because I explained that, you know, other tribes were doing something different than we were. Of course, they may have been operating under different pacts or different agreements that I might be not aware of, but it was his thought that these revenue sharing boards that these other tribes have formed had the same problem that we have, and that they were going to challenge those boards. That they were not, number one, he didn't see them as a government unit, and number two, you know, there's nothing in the stipulation that says that, you know, counties can set up revenue sharing boards. So that are separate from county government, that are a community decision-making board. So David Hicks told me that they're also going to challenge those as part of the audit process. So, so I might have you go back and look at that particular part.
I would point out that the Michigan Supreme Court, in the 2009 decision, pretty much approved exactly that type of a scenario.
So they did?
Yeah.
So something
I
subsequent
would
to
be
that?
surprised that the state would.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to get that clarification, because he said that he wasn't aware that they were allowed to do that, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, I guess my final comment is, we're in a predicament here. We're painted ourselves in a corner at the last minute, you know, we got 2 weeks left to, you know, before the June 30th situation. And, you know, for the relationship that we have with the tribe, and trying to get this thing back on the the format that it should be on, you know, I was hoping that there could be some kind of situation that we could at least follow through with these applications as the original motion, and then figure out, you know, if we can get by on this fiscal agent situation, and then that would end that round, and then in 2013, we would have, you know, we would immediately, after that process, we would notify the tribe that they would have to change that process. But, you know, the applications are in right now, so they would have to technically go out and find someone to be the fiscal agent and get it approved by the board meeting by the end of the month, which might be short because other boards may not, you know, they might not be meeting. So, you know, I don't know if there's any wiggle room to try to facilitate this round of applications and then put them on notice?
Well, I certainly got the impression from talking to the tribal chairman that he wanted to engage in some conversation. Bill Rastetter, their attorney on this wasn't real up to he hadn't been tasked with taking a good look at this until, well, I think they're still trying to figure out who's going to be counsel on it. So anyway, but he certainly made it sound as though the tribe would definitely be interested in engaging in some conversation about this. And the 3 suggestions that I proposed to you, you know, I talked to him about those also, and he didn't necessarily balk at any of them. And so, you know, I don't know. I guess I certainly don't mind being involved in those discussions. Maybe there's some way to make this happen. I just, you know, I truly feel that the grant money should be going to the local units of government. I'm really not getting disagreement from the state on that. You know, that's their whole goal in this case. And maybe there is some, maybe if you give the money to a township, they have a little bit more flexibility as far as who they give the money to. I don't think so, though. I think that nonprofits, that would generally be an unlawful expenditure, so.
Jason?
I think Mr. Cooney is correct, that it should go to government. If we go back and we parse out the way that the compacts were set up, ultimately, you're going to build a gambling institution, but you're not going to pay property taxes. You're not going to, I mean, you're not going to support the governments, and the whole point is, okay, fine, we need to have some way of making it pay for us to tolerate your operation, and ultimately that's how you form a compact. And I believe that is correct, and I think the whole point is it does have an impact, but it has an impact like any other business has an impact. I mean, there's traffic concerns, there's you know, increased, you know, presence of people and emergency services and what have you. But in the process, of course, you know, the compact gives, you know, the 2% payment gives the tribe the ceremonial ability to pay their taxes. I mean, wouldn't that be great if you were a factory here in town and you made a lot of money and you paid your taxes and you could come out and you could celebrate it and you can say, well, I'm not going to pay the government. I'm going to give money to Planned Parenthood, or I'm going to give money to third level crisis. I mean, it's silly season by the time we get around to that kind of stuff. And frankly, if we're going to be handling the money, it should be for those services that we do pay for already. We do have increased costs because of the presence of the casino in our county, like it or not. And it really ought to be coming to us. We shouldn't be begging for it for somebody else and then handling it and not having any real benefit from it as a county.
Herb?
Yeah, two comments or two questions. Well, one of them, if I remember correctly, sometime back, we talked about that if we wanted to give money to any particular organization, we had to enter into a contract in order to be able to do that. And I don't see us entered into any contract with any of these organizations, and whether or not there is a way to be able to do a contract to specify how they're going to spend it, what they're going to do, and how it's good for Grand Traverse County residents.
Yeah, you don't have to enter into a contract, but sometimes it makes sense to do so, so that the intent is clear that this is for a government purpose, and we do that with the fireworks grants that the county, or the money that the county gives for fireworks, but there's a specific statute that allows us to do that.
Right. So the other question I had is whether or not we could ask them to put this money into a fund, and until we get this thing resolved, before they disperse it, that they put the money into a separate fund. They can go through their process, but until we can get together, figure out how this is all going to work, give us some time. You know, we got blindsided by this for a little bit, and the comment was government runs by a snail's pace. You know, really does.
Glacial speed.
Glacial speed, yes. And so I'm just thinking that if we could put this money aside, they could go through and decide how they want to spend this money, but until we can resolve the issue between the two governments, because they are they're their own individual government, so we have to come together with the two governments to iron this out, give us some time, give us the 60 days or something like that, or even 3 months to be able to figure out how to resolve this issue so that it's palatable for all parties. And I just soon delay it some way that way so that we're not going to get this money on July 1st, and then they tell us we got to disperse it, and we haven't figured out what the legalities of it is.
Ross?
So, Bob, just so I'm clear, what we're doing right now, you don't think we should continue at all?
I do agree that, with Dean, that the expenditure by the county of this money, even though we all know it's not general revenue, this is money that's coming to us from the tribe, I think we have to treat it as though it's county money. I mean, that's the whole purpose that the tribe is giving it to us, is that we're the government entity that is being given this money, and then we're tasked with expending it for lawful purposes. Right now, you know, when I look at the list of grant applicants and who we traditionally have awarded these to, you know, I can't say that they're lawful expenditures of public funds. And so I do agree that we can't continue, or we should not continue what we're doing.
So you mentioned the compacts where they have revenue sharing boards, and then you said that the revenue sharing board distributes the money for lawful government purposes. Does that mean that they're only giving the money to other government agencies?
That's my understanding, but I have to tell you, I don't know for sure. All I know is what I got from the Michigan Gaming Commission.
Okay. Was there ever a time where the Grand Traverse Band was giving money just to governments, or has it always been distributed to nonprofits and so forth?
I don't know that for sure. Of course, before 2009, they were doing the distribution directly. It didn't involve the county board. I know that, I believe they've always given some money directly to government entities.
Yeah, well, before 2009, I remember a time when when Traverse City was reviewing applications.
Okay.
And making recommendations. I don't think they carried any weight, just like ours don't carry any weight, but.
Yeah. I do know that it seems that other tribes are giving more of their money, maybe not all of it, but more of it specifically to government entities. It seems that maybe we're a little bit minority.
Sonny, and then Rob, and then...
Early in this process, and my memory might be a little bit fuzzy, Ross, as far as dating, but early in this process, there's 2 grant applications a year. The one set was for nonprofit organizations. The other set was for governmental entities. The schools, the county, the townships, the villages applied for the December or January letting, and the nonprofits applied for the June, July letting. Okay, that's the way it was done early in the process. Up until 2009, all of the money checks were cut by Grand Traverse Band directly to American Red Cross, Trigger Boxing, whatever the organization was they chose to fund. In 2009, along the way, and I'm guessing that probably some auditor come up with the idea that, you have to pay this money back to the governments, because that's what the compact says, and then they come along with the idea that the money would be paid to Grand Traverse County, and Grand Traverse County would then distribute it. And that brought us to this whole process about the interview thing and trying to rank these in the top third, middle third, bottom third, and it didn't make any difference because they still issued the money to whoever they wanted to. The preference meant absolutely nothing to them. My problem is twofold. One, I believe that if we continue to participate in this program, we are, in fact, breaking the law. We are taking money, receiving money into Grand Traverse County and unlawfully distributing it to non-public purpose organizations.
Well, plus which we've never taken a vote on the distribution of the money.
Exactly.
The money comes in, but this board, which is the only board that's authorized to spend the money, has not voted to say, give them 10,000 or 20 or whatever.
Right. Yeah. But the second piece of that is the fact that nonprofit organizations in our community have come to depend on that money.
I know.
It is not going to be popular whatsoever when I tell, well, just because he's here and I won't get beat up on it, I tell Angel Works, you know what, you're not going to get $10,000 next year to help fund daycare for people who can't afford it. You know, that's an organization that has a valid purpose in our community.
Right.
And we've ranked them reasonably well, that there was a benefit for them to be here. But the fact is, they're probably not a lawful purpose for us to distribute money to. Would that be correct, Bob?
I would agree with that.
You know, so this is not going to be a popular decision, but we did not put us in this situation. The tribe put us in this situation. The state treasury department put us in this situation, but we have been put on notice by the auditors from both the state treasury department and our local auditors that what you're doing is wrong. I don't see how we can continue to do it. I think we have to pass this motion to advise them that we will not fiscally be responsible for this money this go-round. We sent the applications. I'm more than willing to have more conversations with them. You know, if, you know, Larry will recall back in 2007, 2008, when I was chairman of this board, I met regularly with tribal leadership to talk about this 2% money, because I did not feel it was being distributed properly, and I did not agree with the process. And I still don't agree with the process, but I've been an active participant in the process because I felt that it was the only way we were going to get it done. You know, I think we still have to have more conversations with them, and the 2013 compact, I firmly believe, is going to look significantly different than the compact that we have in place today. But the fact is, we've been put on notice by the Treasury Department and our auditors, the way we've been doing it is not right, and I don't see how we continue to do that.
Rob?
I think we need to recognize that the purpose of this unit of government is to provide services and infrastructure to our citizens. That money, from what Mr. Cooney is telling us, is to provide that infrastructure and services to our residents based on the fact that having a casino in your community costs money. Things like safety. You know, we had someone rob a bank. Where'd they go? The casino, just a few weeks ago. You know, it's a statistical fact that certain things cost more based on having that there. And from what Bob is telling us, that's where this money goes. So when we look at that money that has been going to 501c3 nonprofit organizations, basically the taxpayers are bearing the burden of the infrastructure instead of who's supposed to be bearing that burden. So when we send money to any nonprofit organization that was supposed to go towards infrastructure, basically taking taxpayer dollars and doing that because the taxpayers have to bear the burden of that. I have a question. This has been going on for a few years. How did we get here? How did this start? And why are we not saying anything until now?
This all started probably about 3 months ago when Mr. Hicks from the Michigan Gaming Commission called me to alert me to the fact that the state was looking at this, and they were talking with the folks across the hall in local audit and finance to try to get both the Grand Traverse Band and our auditors to basically look at this and do business differently. You know, I did want to just correct for the record, Sonny, our auditors have not raised this issue yet because, you know, we're just completing our 2011 audit. I don't expect that they'll look at this until they do our 2012 audit. But the fact that this Michigan Gaming Commission is looking or talking with the folks at local audit and finance, it's going to be on somebody's checklist next year.
Bruce?
Well, first of all, ignorance is bliss. We are no longer, thanks to Mr. Cooney, ignorant, and we cannot ignore this. We are on notice. That's number one. Number two, the Grand Traverse Band is a sovereign nation. I think that has some weight in our decision, which I think is, and I'm supporting Sonny's motion, I think we need to step back. I think we basically need to say, we are no longer fiduciaries. Number 3 is, I've worked with the new tribal chairman for years on Commission on Aging. I have the utmost confidence in him. He is an outstanding individual, and I have complete faith that he will work with Mr. Cooney, Mr. Benda, Mr. Bott in solving this. But in the meantime, I think we are on notice. We need to step back. We need to pass this motion. And I would add one more thing. Something Commissioner Wheelock said, we have never had any say in where that money was allocated in the past. Let's just step back and get out of it right now.
Jason?
I'll disagree. We've had a say, and I'll disagree with Mr. Wheelock's comment that it's not our fault. It's as much our fault because we do this even now with other things decisions that we make and monies we take, and the paths they lead us down. I'm going to support the motion because I do think we should be backing out of it. I think a better motion or a better activity, however, would be to take the money and pass on the proceeds to those legitimate functions, and then send a letter back and say, now for the rest of this, here are your alternatives. This is what we'd like to do because we can't provide the money to these other areas. Now you have to remember that the tribes, they operate under a compact because they have to operate under a compact. Yes, they're a sovereign nation, but they're also operating under the authority of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They are operating under the authority of the federal government. The federal government says you must have a compact with the state to be a sovereign nation and to operate your gaming enterprises. They have a lot of pressure on them as well, and they need to comply with what is needed and necessary locally. So I think that would probably be the better way, but I will support this motion just simply to step back and let them take the ball, run with it. It's in their court.
Larry?
Two things. One is, since this was part of Sonny's original motion that failed, should we have a motion to reconsider rather than the motion itself at this point? And I guess the second point is, I guess that's for your consideration. And the second point is, I agree with Jason in terms of how to proceed. That's why I would vote no on this, and I would just go back to the tribe and say, we're willing to be the fiduciary on this thing for this year and comply with the Michigan Gaming Control Board's direction on lawful distributions, and if they're unlawful, we send it back to the tribe and they have to work it out some way. They're just going to have to figure out their own little issue. And if it works out that it doesn't make sense for us to be the fiduciary, and most of the requests come in that are unlawful, then they'll just go out and find a different way of doing this thing. So I just soon do what we can for them, and the other stuff, I'm in favor of having what Jason's saying, is just sending it back and say, it's not appropriate for us to make those appropriations. And at least we still maintain some reasonable relationship with those folks, and we're not sort of like visually jamming it down their throat in the last hour. So that's why I would vote no on the motion to reconsider if that's the appropriate motion that should be occurring.
I guess I'm not sure what the difference was between the first motion and the second motion.
His first motion was to send the application back and
Bob,
not be the fiduciary.
my original motion last week was that we forward all applications to the tribe and serve the tribe with notice that we would not be the fiscal agent. That motion failed. So we in turn get a second motion to forward all applications to the tribe. That motion passed. We did not discuss the portion about the fiscal agent until tonight. So is that a reconsider, or is it okay that this is truly a new motion in that the original motion that failed was to forward the applications and serve notice about the fiduciary issue. I believe this is a separate motion because the other half of the other motion passed.
I believe it's a new motion because it's really an amendment to the motion. I believe you could treat it as a new motion.
All right.
Otherwise, you'd need a separate vote.
Right.
The only difference would be you'd need a separate vote with a majority voting to reconsider.
Do you need a majority to pass this?
Yes.
No, not, I mean, a two-thirds vote, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
As a new motion, it's just a regular majority.
Oh, okay.
You know, Mr. Cooney, I believe today I heard on the media, I don't recall which media, Bill Rasteller either talking or was cited in saying, and he and I believe was at one time the tribal council years ago, also the tribal chairman. And what his comment was, when he was involved in that original deal, it was with the federal government. He says the state has no bearing in this matter whatsoever. It's between us and the federal government.
Well, actually, it's the governor of the state that has the ability to enforce the compact. And when Commissioner Henschel asked how did things get off track here, I think maybe because the 2% funding did not go to the state, it went to the local units of government. There was less incentive on the part of the state to take action when they started to see that things weren't being done quite the way it was intended in that stipulation. That's just my guess about, why no action was taken by the state. I don't know whether, as a third-party beneficiary to that contract, the county and other local units of government could have gotten together and sued the state in order to enforce that contract. Maybe that's a possibility. I don't know whether we had that right or not, but it was really only the governor who could bring an action against the tribes to enforce what is essentially just a contract between the tribes and the governor.
These documents are all written Governor John Engler versus Grand Traverse Band of the Ottawa and Chippewa Indian.
Rob?
Sonny, what would you think of a motion that would instead be simply to send notice to the tribe that we will be the fiduciary agent, but we will not distribute any funds in an unlawful manner, and go forward from there? That would give them the opportunity to continue the process of taking the right path, which is to fund infrastructure and services for the local region.
I don't believe that we have the ability at this point to determine which of those applications we've already submitted applications that I know very well would not meet that criteria. So how would I have endorsed and forwarded applications that I would not be willing to fund? And therefore, if I'm not willing to fund them, but I've already endorsed them and sent those applications, then I shouldn't have sent them. We've already sent those. So as far as I'm concerned, at this point, I would just as soon not participate in the distribution of the funding.
For me, it would be a notice based on new information that's been brought to our attention.
Well, we had this information a week ago.
I'm sorry, I wasn't explained the way Mr. Cooney just explained it to us now, that time.
Larry?
Well, for the sake of the motion, I'm just wondering, because of the timeliness, technically, the motion is structured that it would be purely a recommendation that would go to the board at the end of the month, and that would give like zero time for them to react. If your motion is this is a full ratification of the board, then it would be completed after the vote, and then we would be able to give them at least a week's notice. I don't know if it makes any sense to do that or not. I mean, if you want to ratify it now, or do you want to have the board ratify it at our board meeting?
I'm at the board meeting.
Bob, do you have an opinion about that?
Should go in next month, or next week.
At least it gives notice to the tribe if we just make a recommendation.
You're saying you want to make a recommendation?
To the full board
To the full
at
board.
the end of the month.
If we
next
just
week.
pass this motion as part of the Ways and Means meeting, it will have to be ratified at the Board of Commissioners meeting next week.
Right.
And what Larry's asking is if we want to ratify that that motion tonight.
Well, it seems that you put the tribe on notice that you're serious, if that's the way that you vote. If you approve it tonight, knowing that this is not a final decision, but it's certainly, it's the recommendation of the Ways and Means Committee.
Okay, that's probably the way to go. All right.
Ross?
Well, I mean, all we're telling the tribe is, whatever you decide to do with the 2% money, don't give it to us. So, I mean, it's not like it puts them in a bind, they just,
That's right.
they just get to mail the
That's
checks out.
exactly right.
They get to mail the checks out themselves. Sonny, how do you see this being resolved down the road? I mean, basically, what you've done here is something for, what's happening right now, but, how do you see it going forward?
We were this close to an agreement that gave Grand Traverse County payment in lieu of taxes. We were that close.
The whole board changed over.
And then along came a new tribal election, new tribal chairmans, and it all went away. Along with a certain tribal attorney that said no. I still believe that we have to work with the tribe to get to a payment in lieu of taxes, whether it's paid out of the 2% money or where they pay the money from, I don't care. But I believe Grand Traverse County has to be made whole in regard to a payment in lieu of taxes. If you read the consent agreement, if you read the compact, it said that the local units of government will receive money up to, or no less than equal to the per diem tax, or
Ad valorem.
ad valorem tax revenue that should have been paid. I believe we have to get to a point that Grand Traverse County is made whole for payment in lieu of land taxes. And it's going to take more discussions and more time, but I believe that's where we've got to get to. And I don't care where they pay the money to Grand Traverse County from. Whether they pay it from the 2% money and that makes it, comes out of the money that they say in the 2% agreement, that they will pay that money back to local units equal to the land taxes. That's where we have to get to. Other than that, the county is coming short. You're exactly right when you talk about that money is coming in here and we're paying it out to these nonprofit organizations. But that was not the purpose, and it's not the way the consent agreement nor the compact is written. That's the way it's been done.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to take back what I said about the motion to reconsider. Mr. Bott did give me a copy of the original motion, and the first motion that was moved by Commissioner Wheelock is the same motion that he's making now, isn't it?
No, there was two parts of the first motion, the original motion.
Yeah, and that was to no longer be involved, is what this says.
To forward the resolution, or the applications,
And not be
and to not be involved in the finance.
Not be the fiscal agent.
Not be the fiscal agent.
Yeah,
That was the original
Well,
motion.
this says no longer be the intermediary, but that's the same as not wanting to be the fiscal agent. So I see it as the same
I
motion.
thought he said fiscal agent in the
I think I said fiscal agent originally,
Yeah.
but there was two parts of the original motion. One was to forward all applications without preference, and two was to no longer be the fiscal agent.
Right.
So that's why I thought we've already passed the part about the applications, so I think this is a new motion personally. But if you want to vote on it to reconsider, we can do that too.
You would need a commissioner who voted on the prevailing side, who, either Inman, Henschel, Lemko, or Richardson, to make the motion.
To reconsider.
Yeah, and you'd need a majority vote to reconsider.
Majority vote to reconsider?
I have a question about that. There was two parts to the motion last week. That motion failed. That was the first motion.
Yes.
And then the second part of that motion came back as a new motion, but it was not reconsidered.
But it was...
Illegal motion?
But it,
Yeah.
I wasn't here.
Technically, you're right. There should have been a motion to reconsider.
I would say that was a new motion though, because it didn't have it dropped off.
The latter part of the first motion.
This motion doesn't have the original first part, so what difference does it make?
Exactly.
The decision is up to the chairman, so.
per your board rules.
Mr. Chairman?
I would think that I personally don't think we need to reconsider for the reason Sonny said. You know, there really isn't much difference between the first one and the second one. And if we go with the reconsideration tonight, then I think we had an illegal
I've got a
motion last
question.
week.
Mr. Chairman, Bob, this was passed never mind.
No.
You weren't
No, I know, what I was thinking of, is how we pass motions, and then at the end of the month, sometimes we change our minds and we pull them, and I'm thinking, oh, well, if it didn't pass, can we bring it now? Never mind.
Ross?
Well, I mean,
It's getting
we
late.
are, after all, at this point, just talking about whether we're going to follow our own rules or not. I'm willing to make the motion for reconsideration if,
You gotta get him to withdraw his.
well, I understand that, but I'm not making a motion yet.
Okay.
I said I'm willing to make the motion for reconsideration if that would just help,
No, the second one was carried.
resolve it and tie everything up.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman,
We got it. Because the second part of the motion was approved, if Mr. Wheelock's motion were simply that we no longer want to be the fiscal agent for the money, that would be a new motion. So that's what we have.
That would be what?
Because you've already approved forwarding all of the applications back to the tribe, that was carried, okay? The other part of it that was not carried in the original motion, but was part of a two-part motion, was to no longer be the fiscal agent. So this would be a new motion.
So the motion that I've made, that's on the floor,
Yeah.
that Grand Traverse County not be the fiscal agent for this round of grant money is a new motion.
That's a new motion.
Okay, good enough.
my support stands.
Rob?
Sonny, I agree with every bit of sentiment about the appropriateness. What I don't agree with this motion is that the timing of it, I believe, will be a slap in the face to the tribe, whether it's intended to be or not, and I think it can create a rift, and I don't think this is the right way to do this. I think this will create a division when we need to get together and solve something. I think it's just going to push them farther, my personal opinion.
And I agree.
Vote accordingly. Call the question.
Any other comments or discussion?
I agree with Commissioner Henschel.
Jason?
I've changed my mind. I'm not going to support this motion, and I'm hoping that a follow-up motion happens.
Well,
You know, I don't understand sometimes why us low government officials don't stand up to the state regardless of what the situation is and say, now, wait a moment, this is our community. And perhaps we don't want to anger the tribe. You know, like Commissioner Maxbauer so correctly stated earlier tonight, the new tribal chairman is one fine fella, and there's no doubt in my mind he means to do the best for the tribe and the community.
And the right.
Not alone just the tribe, but the whole Grand Traverse County area. I don't think I'm going to support the motion either. Ross?
I have a question for Larry Inman. So assuming this motion fails, what do you see, how do you see the process going forward?
Well, given Bob's report tonight, I guess if I had a suggestion is that I would suggest that, Dean, Dave, Bob, and I, and the vice chairman get on the phone with the tribe in their council and discuss this further with them and either come up with a solution or not come up with a solution by the board meeting.
And as far as the grants this summer, we're just going to let them
Yeah, I would
decide?
just forward them to them, as Sonny's indicated in his previous.
But then the money will come back to us to distribute?
Yeah, we got to discuss.
As it's been?
That's what we have to discuss with them.
If this
But
motion
that's what
passes-
you're voting to do
If this
tonight.
motion
You're
passes tonight, you
voting
can still
to-
pull it next
to-
week.
To continue doing something that's illegal.
Well, I'm voting against, I'm not saying that I have a solution to this thing tonight.
Who says it's illegal?
Mr. Cooney?
When did the PAC start, Bob?
I've always said it was
1993.
illegal, Larry.
Huh?
1993.
So, from 83, not only us,
No.
93.
For
a lot
10 years that we've been contesting that this was not in compliance with the compact. And I'm telling you, I've spent hours and hours and hours meeting with tribal leadership over the years to try to deal with this issue because the way that it's been handled has not been done right. It's not in compliance with the compact. It's not in compliance with the consent agreement. You know, I certainly recognize the partnership that we've had with the tribe and the things that we've done that have been great for our community. This is one of the things that, while there's been benefit to some of the community, it just simply hasn't been done correctly. If we pass this motion tonight, we still have the ability next week, if we have a meeting with tribal leadership within the next week, we still have the ability next week to pull it and talk about it with new information and take a different vote. It's going to be on the consent calendar. I'm not asking that we make this ratified tonight. I'm asking that this motion pass to move forward to the Board of Commissioners.
and your motion is?
My motion is to notify the tribe that we will not be the fiscal agent for this round of grants.
Chris?
I want everybody to know that the reason I'm supporting this motion, I don't believe for 30 seconds that we will offend Alfred Wagon or the new tribal council by passing this. If I thought that we would be causing a rift, I wouldn't support this. Again, I've known him for years. He is just the fairest, most intelligent, most reasonable man. He will come to the table. I believe that the new tribal council members will come to the table. I think we'll resolve this, but I do think we need to pass this because Mr. Cooney says, if we don't, we're breaking the law.
What are they going to do, lock us up?
Well,
I don't think so.
it's happened before.
I'm dead serious.
Yeah, we've done nothing for 10 years.
But I'll tell you what, based on
We
what...
might have to return the money out of the, Jennifer,
You might anyway. You've been violating the law for years.
yes, but we didn't know it, and I think there's a huge difference.
Sonny says he knew it for 10 years.
Well,
Bitching about it.
I haven't known it for 10 years. You know, as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Cooney has put me on notice. And if I'm on notice that I'm doing something unlawful, I'm going to stop.
I'll vote for the motion based on what Sonny said. It'll be on the consent calendar. And I'll guarantee you, if we don't come up with some agreement, I'll probably pull it off and try and talk a majority of this board into voting no next Wednesday. Rob?
I just want to point out that it's not illegal for us to receive the money. It's illegal for us to distribute it.
That's right.
And it is my intention, just for discussion, if recognized by the chair after this motion were to fail, I would make a motion that to notify the tribe that we will not distribute any funds in ways that are not consistent with the law. That was my intention, and that's why I'm going to vote no for this motion.
Jason?
Yeah, I've also crafted a follow-through, so it's going to be a race to the...
Whatever the chair recognizes.
Good, because it's quarter after.
I've also got a follow-up motion in the event that this motion does fail, because I think, I'm not worried about offending the tribe either. I think, like I say, I think they're under the same kind of pressures, but I think we need to say something in one way or the other, either be with this motion or in a better way, accepting what we can, making it work for us now, and then advising on the remainder. And I think that's where we need to go ultimately, and that's why I'm not going to support it, because actually I'm hoping to be able to make the next motion. at this
Okay,
point.
does everybody understand the motion?
Yeah.
Roll call vote,
Does
please.
anybody remember it?
Commissioner Richardson?
Yeah, wait a minute.
Yes.
Would you repeat the motion once more, please?
Notify board we will not be fiscal agent for June-July grant cycle.
Notify band.
Man, not board.
Grand Traverse Band.
Band.
Yeah, the Grand
Oh,
Traverse.
yeah, this was my shorthand.
It's 9:15, we know.
Okay, does everyone understand the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Gilman?
No.
Inman?
Nope.
Henschel?
No.
Lemko?
Yes.
Fleece?
Yes,
Passed.
motion passes.
All right.
Okay. Next item on the agenda
Oh, boy.
We already got that one. don't we?
is, no, we have soil erosion now.
We're fine.
The addition to the
Oh, yeah, that's
agenda
right.
by Mr. Cooney?
The reason I requested this be added to the agenda is because I just received I'm going to call it the official review letter from MDEQ on Monday, and I know that there's been a lot of anxiety, I guess I'd call it, in the soil erosion office. I don't know how much any of the commissioners have been contacted, either by the employees there or Dean or Jen, about the issues going on there, but I certainly received my share of phone calls, and so this seemed to be an issue that needed to get resolved sooner rather than later. But anyway, what the letter indicates is that if the county board adopts 3 changes, which are really unrelated to the reason that the ordinance was amended in the first place, that the MDEQ Water Resources Division would approve the change. In fact, they've given pre-approval if the county board adopts an ordinance with these changes. I sent everyone a copy of the revised ordinance with the changes, and the 3 fixes that they wanted, well, they're stated in the letter, but essentially the first one is that in section 4, where it says rules not in conflict with Part 91, well, our ordinance cannot preempt any part of Part 91. Part 91 takes precedent, and so I took out the words "which do not conflict with." And just so you know, the revised ordinance that you received is the same copy I sent to MDEQ. They informed me about 2 weeks ago that they were going to insist upon these changes. In fact, it was June 1st. And in a draft letter, and so I made the changes. I sent it to Sarah Vandell Fiesel, who was in charge of this process, and she confirmed that those changes would satisfy the MDEQ anyway. The second change was that there was a change in the law since we adopted our original ordinance. It used to be that DEQ would be the enforcement agent if you had a project that crossed jurisdictional boundaries. That's no longer the case now. There has to be either an interlocal agreement or some agreement between the 2 jurisdictions, or both jurisdictions simply do the enforcement. So that's a change that was made in section 4, I believe.
6, I think.
Section 6, A4. Okay. And then the third change, what the language appeared to be doing is putting conditions upon the exemptions that are allowed under Part 91. That's something that a county can't do with its ordinance. The exemptions under Part 91 control, and you can't change those, and so that was reworded so that we don't have that conflict. There was another change that I made, a typo there, I can pull up the ordinance here real quick.
Was it just the date?
The date was added. It was the second change, I believe. Yeah, section 6A4. It should read, when earth changes are proposed on sites which are located in the jurisdiction of 2 or more local or county enforcing agencies, the applicant must obtain permit coverage. And so with that change, I would, I guess I would request that the board approve the revised ordinance either tonight or at its next regular meeting. Now, the letter from MDEQ also mentions some other concerns the agency has, and this isn't something new. It talks about the stormwater runoff provisions that are in the ordinance. We all know that the Attorney General has said that those provisions cannot lawfully be enforced by the county. That's why the townships have their own ordinances regarding stormwater runoff, which the county, the Drain Commissioner has agreed to enforce. The other concerns that are noted by MDEQ come from the Soil Conservation District, and they pointed out the implementation problems with the stormwater runoff control portion of the ordinance by the townships. Essentially what the Soil Conservation and the Watershed Council's remarks were is that now you've got the Drain Commissioner doing the stormwater runoff portion of the township ordinances separately and apart from the enforcement agent for the county, the Part 91 enforcement agent, doing the soil erosion sedimentation control under Part 91. Now, the only thing the state cares about is whether the county enforces Part 91. That's the soil erosion sedimentation control. They really are not concerned about the stormwater runoff portion of the ordinance. That's not an environmental concern under Part 91. That has to do with properties being flooded. But they did want to note that those were comments from the Soil Conservation District and the Watershed Council. The Soil Conservation District, by statute, was required to be notified about the changes and given a chance to comment on them. And I certainly agree with their assessment that it does create some implementation problems and inefficiencies, and I think that those should be, there should be some action to resolve those. One thing I would suggest is that because there are these stormwater runoff provisions in the ordinance that shouldn't be there, is that this board create a committee that would be composed of all the stakeholders involved in this, including folks such as members of the Watershed Council, developers, maybe NIMIAC, the Soil Conservation District, and the Board of Commissioners, which is responsible for enforcement of Part 91, to review the ordinance and make any necessary changes.
Sonny?
Bob, this amended ordinance, do we have to hold a public hearing and publish this?
You need to have a public hearing, and it would have to be published.
And timeline from the time we pass this for public hearing till the public hearing can be held?
Well, when I say public hearing, it has to be adopted at a public meeting. That's the only reason.
Okay, so it just has to be adopted at a public meeting. Yes. We do not have to have a public hearing per se. Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the revised amendment to the Grand Traverse County Soil Erosion Sedimentation Control Ordinance as drafted and outlined by Civil Council.
Support.
Who said support?
No, Rob did. Wasn't it Rob? Who support? Yeah, it was Rob. Everybody understand the motion? Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Oops, roll call vote.
I'm sorry,
Ross?
I was trying to get a comment in, and then you were calling the vote.
Well, we're going to take a roll call vote, so go ahead and put the comment in.
Okay, well, mostly, I mean, no offense, Bob, but this is the old, dropping on your desk, all 20 pages, and ask you to vote on in the middle of the meeting. And I am aware that you emailed it last night, and I saw it there, but I didn't have time to open it up and read it.
Yeah.
I mean, the real issue is between the Part 91 soil erosion stuff and the stormwater stuff, right?
Mhm.
But the stormwater is not even a county function, that's a township function.
That's, well, what I
Or
would say...
the ordinance is, the enforcement of stormwater ordinance is comes from the townships and not from the county?
Yeah, the county is required to enforce Part 91.
Right.
The county has no authority to enact an ordinance that controls flooding, okay?
Okay.
But our original ordinance passed in '93, and those provisions are still in it, cover flooding. In a 2006 opinion, the Attorney General, by letter opinion, indicated that those provisions are unlawful. And so at that time, the Drain Commissioner went around to all of the different townships and advocated in favor of them adopting their own ordinance that would cover flooding issues. And he indicated that the Drain Commissioner's office would enforce, do the permitting and the enforcement of those controls, stormwater
Right.
controls.
And that was something that was negotiated between the Drain Commissioner and the townships.
I
As far as you
wouldn't so
know.
much say negotiated as he advocated in favor of it and agreed that his office would perform that function.
Right. And the
And,
townships did not offer any compensation for this service.
That's correct. In fact, many of the townships, I was at some of the township meetings where the ordinance was adopted, and a big concern of the townships was, is this going to cost us any money?
Right. And there are actually one or two townships in the county that have not adopted stormwater.
Blair and Green Lake, I believe.
Blair and Green Lake, correct.
Blair and Green Lake. So a lot of the comments here about the concerns about, how, the stormwater and the soil erosion are separate. I mean, the stormwater isn't even really our responsibility.
That's correct.
Except that the Drain Commissioner made it so.
And obviously, it opens a little bit of a can of worms here, because now, when the townships go back and, I know that some of them are aware of this, what's happened here. I think all of them are probably aware of it. They probably realize they need to look at their ordinances and decide, well, are we going to continue with this function or not? Because they would need to change their ordinance to indicate that the county construction code department would perform that function. And then I think it's really this board's decision whether or not they want the construction code department performing that function.
Okay. And then the other question I have is this is on near the bottom of page 3. It says section such and such of Part 91 requires that the individuals with decision-making authority who are responsible for administering the county program have current certificates of training under Section 9123 of Part 91. Is that going to be true when the soil erosion operation moves to the Construction Code Office?
Well, it will be true in that Gwen Zagor and Mike Dillenbeck, who are the current part-time soil erosion inspectors. We have 2 part-time soil erosion inspectors. They are adequately trained and certified to do soil erosion inspections.
Right. No, I understand that, but do they have the decision-making authority?
They would have to have the decision-making authority. What I think should happen, though, is that probably Bruce Ramey or someone else in the office probably Bruce makes the most sense. He should take, I think it's a 2-week training course with MDEQ, so that he's also certified, so that he could overrule decisions that are made by either Mike or Gwen. What the point MDEQ is trying to make there is that if the Board of Commissioners were going to get involved, I know this was a concern when this whole issue came up, whether the Board of Commissioners would be overruling decisions of the Construction Code Department. What MDEQ is saying, you can't do that unless the commissioners are all trained to be soil erosion inspectors. And some ordinances...
Well, I think people were taking some comments out of context, but that's all right.
And some ordinances actually have an appeals board, and all members of that appeals board, if they're going to make a final determination, would have to be trained in soil erosion and sedimentation control inspection. Now, what you should realize is that actually that requirement to be trained kind of ends when a prosecution is initiated. The prosecutor doesn't have to be trained, nor does the judge that decides the case.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Sonny?
I would note that while we, for this purpose of this discussion, we don't talk about the stormwater piece of that. That is a township issue.
Right.
I was, however, last month, and I provided Dean with some documentation at Long Lake Township's meeting, because Long Lake Township, their intergovernmental agreement with the Drain Commissioner's Office for the enforcement of their stormwater ordinance expires in July. All the rest of them in the county expire December 31st.
Oh, okay.
But theirs expires in July because that's where their fiscal year is. And, the Drain Commissioner was present, and he was explaining to them that he would continue to enforce that, but there would be a fee for those. That's the way I understood that.
There would be a fee.
There would be a fee for those inspections and for plat reviews and those kind of things, because he is required to do those.
But, yeah, he doesn't set fees, we set fees, correct?
All I'm saying is what the conversation was, and I wasn't going to have that discussion at that point or time. What I assured Grand Traverse County is that assured Long Lake Township, Grand Traverse County would make sure that there was a qualified inspector available to enforce their ordinance.
Another can of worms.
Chris?
But what about fees?
Well, I believe Bob just talked about the fact that it doesn't allow for a fee to be collected. The way the intergovernmental agreements are, there is no fee for those enforcements.
But if the agreement ends in July, then we just don't need to do it anymore, right?
We shouldn't do it if there's no agreement. The reason our office insisted that the Drain Commissioner, if he wanted to do this, he had to go out and get an agreement, is because we're not going to go into court and argue that we're going to enforce this unless we've been given authority by the township to do it. So I think those ordinances have to be in effect.
The intergovernmental agreements will all have to be reviewed when this whole thing shakes out. There's no question about that.
Okay, roll call vote.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
No.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Gilman?
Yeah.
Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Lemko?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Please.
Yes. Motion
Mr. Chairman?
passes 8-1. Larry?
As a follow-up to the previous motion, I would like to make a suggestion to the board that the tribal board committee of the county board be activated, and that myself and Gilman are members, and that we add Vice Chairman Fleece, Bob Cooney, Dean Bott, and Dave Benda, and that we notify the tribe and have a discussion with them either by phone or in person regarding the recommendation to the board meeting, and if they have any new information they need to get to us, we can get it to you prior to the board meeting.
Ross?
I would like to make a motion, going back to the soil erosion, to strong...
Motion on the
Did
floor.
you make a motion?
What?
We have a motion waiting a second. No, do we not?
Well, I said I have a recommendation for the board, but I
Oh,
can
that
change it
wasn't
to
a
a...
motion.
I can change it to a motion.
Was that
if
a
you'd like.
motion?
Can you repeat that?
It wasn't a motion, Bonnie, so you were fine.
Practice a short
Just put, the motion is to reactivate the,
All right, I'll make a motion that to activate the ad hoc committee of the Grand Traverse Board Tribal Committee with Inman Gilman, add Vice Chairman Fleece, Cooney, Dean, and Benda, to notify the tribe of the preliminary decision tonight, and if they have any additional information, they can share it with us.
Support.
everybody understand the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Rob?
I wanted to throw a motion out there for discussion, possibly to pass, that we notify, with regards to the stormwater enforcement, we notify townships that have an agreement with Grand Traverse County for enforcement, that at the end of that, we do not intend to continue enforcement of those ordinances.
Why would you do that?
Just to give them a heads up that we're no longer going to be providing this. You don't want to wait till the end of their agreement and all of a sudden, hey, we've got no function to
The
enforce it.
agreement ends, unless they,
Well, the
It's just-
agreement ends, if the drain commissioner
Right.
wants to renegotiate the agreement, that's fine.
And we're not saying they can't renegotiate, we're just giving them a heads up.
but I'm sure they know what agreements they've agreed to.
Not necessarily. You got new boards.
Good point.
Not always the case, I just wanted to give them a
Okay.
heads up.
You got new people.
What was the motion, Rob?
That we just send notification that at the end of the current agreement, the Grand Traverse County will no longer be enforcing stormwater ordinance in their township.
Support for it? Motion dies with lack of support. Ross?
Okay, speaking of soil erosion, I would like to make a motion that we strongly recommend that a supervisor in the construction code office get the necessary training to be, as Part 91 requires. It's an individual decision-making authority gets the required training under Part 91.
Support.
Everybody understand the motion, Chris?
But if the agreements all end at the end of the year...
No, this is Part 91. We're
No,
91.
this is Part
This is the part we
91.
actually do it in.
Ah, I'm sorry.
This is soil erosion.
All right. I got lost.
Okay, everybody understand the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous. Okay, moving right along. New business, septic facility. Seems like we talked about this before.
We did.
Special assessment discussion headed by Thomas and Inman.
The reason why I wanted this brought up is at the last BPW meeting, they voted on whether they wanted to move ahead with the special assessment district. And it passed, so that they're moving ahead. They're going to hire engineers to tell them how much it should be and this and that and the other thing. However, I was one that voted against it. I was informed that we had taken action at some time in the past history that we were opposed to special assessment district. Well, when I brought this, when I told them that the county board was not in favor of a special assessment district, I got a whole bunch of funny looks for the rest of the BPW. And so I come back and I talked to Larry about it, and our staff, the DPW staff, and I think Linda Colburn's bunch had to do with it too. They could find nothing in written records whether we were opposed to a special assessment district or not. And I feel when I go to the DPW or the BPW meetings, I'm voting for our stand. I'm not voting on my own idea. And we didn't have any written history of how we stood actually, it put me in a position where I found out that my mouth and my foot were the same size. But from here forward, I've got to know what you guys want to do. Because I would probably vote a different way on a special assessment than a bunch of you would. And we're going to do what the majority wants. And I just wanted to brought up, because for one thing, I wanted everybody to know that I did get myself into a jam out there on the issue, because, maybe we did take action, but it's not in written history.
Dick, does that special assessment district include Elmwood Township?
It probably does, yeah.
Yeah, it would include
There's no reason
anybody
why-
that had a septic tank.
Yeah,
I
everybody.
mean, does it include parts of Leelanau County that's outside of Grand Traverse?
Sure, and portions of Elmwood Township are
In the city.
Yeah,
but I
in
don't
the city.
think, I don't think the County Board of Public Works can institute a special assessment on Leelanau County.
I don't think so.
No, but
No, they have
I
to do it
think,
themselves.
Yeah, that's your question, right?
Yeah,
And are they going to do that?
I don't.
Let me tell you,
Well, just like Chris said she wanted a meeting, we don't need to hurry with the meeting because they've got a lot of footwork to do before they get there.
just, since you brought it up, my thought is that Elmwood Township, being in Leelanau County, owns part of that plant. And if we are making somebody in Paradise Township who has zero ownership,
They're one of the 5 townships.
right.
Okay.
And my point is, they're outside. So
Doesn't
are we
matter.
making people that have zero
They're a member-
ownership pay
they-
for something that someone else owns that's not even in our county?
Doesn't matter.
They're a member of the
they
Board of
are
Public
ass-
Works.
They are accessible because they're part of the DP.
Okay.
Yeah, they're a member of the Board of Public Works.
Remember, this is not a county assessment. This is an assessment by the Board of Public Works.
right.
Elmwood Township is a member of the Board of Public Works.
That was my question.
They have to have 2 public hearings before they can even.
well, in response to Dick's question, unless I'm told different, and I haven't been, I've been told very strongly every time this topic comes up, special assessment, Paradise, Mayfield, and Blair, my portion of Blair, which is the greatest physical part of Blair, absolutely not. And should you vote, because they don't realize we can't vote, should you institute a special assessment, you're gone. Plain English. I mean, they are not happy, and Dick was telling me that the G5's been talking with the rural townships, and maybe there's going to be a consensus. Well, I hope before it gets to the point of where they try a special assessment, that there is a consensus, because once the BPW does the special assessment, the only avenue we would have, we can stop it. And I think we'd, I don't know how the rest of you and your constituency is,
How
but,
can we stop it?
well, no.
We don't
Not
have-
allow them to do it. I
we don't
think we
have
have that authority.
We don't have that
No,
authority.
we have legal opinion.
Bob, don't we
We've got
have the
no
authority
say in this.
on a special assessment to BPW?
No.
The authority to approve?
Yeah, if the BPW voted to pass a special assessment, does the county board have the authority to say, no, you're not going to do that?
I would have to revisit, I know I've looked at that before, but
I'm sure during the finance committee meetings, that's the way it was.
Well, we have an opinion in file,
Yeah, we do.
but it wasn't from you.
Ross?
My memory of that was we couldn't tell them what to do, but we could tell them what they couldn't do. In other words,
Well, we've been doing
we
that
could-
for a number of years.
we could tell them that they couldn't do a special assessment, but we couldn't tell them that they should do one, or that they had to do one, let's put it
Well,
that way.
Dick?
Well, the thing is, there will be votes coming up in the next 6 months where I'm going to have to vote one way or the other on action for the BPW. And if nothing else, I want a general opinion of where we're going. Now, I know we can't decide on whether we're in favor of a special assessment, because they come out and said, well, yeah, we're going to have $40 a month and not change the price per gallon. Well, I'd never vote for that. I wouldn't do that if you guys did approve it. On the other hand, if they make a special assessment and the gallon fee's low enough so that it becomes, say, cost neutral for the customer to pump every 5 years, then you're not, most people should be pumping every 5 years or so anyway. So it's cost neutral to the way it is now. But one of the things they've got to do is they've got to get the price more reasonable because, you can't sell a lot full of used cars by raising the price on them.
Right.
Jason?
First of all, I'd like to note that your assessment of what the board wanted is probably more correct. I know you say you come back and you think it's different, but if I was to take a read last year, the board was definitely still against an assessment at that point.
We got nothing on paper, and that's what
I understand it, but I think it's appropriate that if you have a sense of where the board's at, you can't rely on us to have a decision before you make every decision when you're on the BPW board. So I wouldn't beat yourself up too much about that. And as far as the non-participating townships, if there is going to be a special assessment, it has to punish them as little as possible. In fact, it has to give them some advantage to be a part of it. And if it's even possible to have an assessment that reaches out, maybe it has to be a tiered assessment, maybe a little bit more for those townships that frankly will get a major advantage by such a tool, which would be the G5. The G5 maybe pays a little bit more per gallonage or something, and then the non G5 pays less if they wind up getting stuck with an assessment, or they pay less of an assessment. I think it's important to note that they got dragged into this, whether kicking and screaming, whether they liked it or not. And in the beginning, it was the thought that, hey, we're going to make some money, because we had the waste up north.
That was never the thought. Government can't make money.
Well,
Well, I can tell you the people out in the other time zone where I live, you don't find many people that want a special assessment district.
No, that's true.
They will all fight it. And, well, maybe you don't have one for them. Maybe you just leave their price at 12 cents a gallon, but that puts a load on the hauler's back that he can't overcome because he's got to be able to prove where it come from.
Right.
And,
that's a good point.
Unless you put all septic tanks in the outlying districts have to have purple dye in them. There's no way they can tell where it comes from.
Yeah, when you got 3,000 gallon truck and you pump 1,200 out of my tank and 1,200 out of somebody else's tank, you can't tell either.
Chris?
Well, I just want you to know, as you say that, Commissioner Gilman, I was at a Peninsula Township meeting, and I happened to, by chance, be the only commissioner there. And I heard two of the township trustees say that if the other townships are not going to help them with this, what they will do is basically what they wanted to do was basically hike up the rates for everyone else and let their township pump free. So that's the other end of the coin. So everybody needs to be aware that all the townships have said we're going to pump it at and take it to the septic treatment facility. We can't start being opposed to each other. We've got to try to work together, because I would hate to see something like that happen, and it certainly is possible.
Well, one of the things a lot of people miss is that they say, well, if you pass this resolution saying that your septic has to go to that plant. That's not what the state law says. The state law says if you're within 25 miles of that plant, you have to send it to a plant.
But the townships agreed to send it to the Grand Traverse County BPW septic treatment facility. They agreed to that.
But But, and what are they gonna do, chase the haulers around?
Yeah,
You
based on the
might
state.
be surprised.
They
I mean, I would rather have everyone work together than,
Well, so would I, but
Based on the state law, you don't need the ordinances. All of them would fit within the 25-mile range. There isn't a plant within 25 miles of Grand Traverse. They all would have to bring it based on state law.
But they don't have to take it to that one, they can take it to Frankfurt if it's cheaper.
Um,
The law says.
You might be on the,
pay
you might
plant.
be on the end of that, you might have one or two houses that
Says
could
it
fit
has
into
to go to a
that formula.
designated facility. Has to go to a designated facility,
Well.
which would also include Joe Williams's ground application.
well, let's just tread softly here,
Well,
folks.
anyway.
I would just hold tight until they come up with their
Does
deal.
anybody remember us ever taking
I do.
action?
I do.
If we ever took a vote.
We never took a
I think it
vote.
was a consensus thing that we were asked about.
Consensus thing.
Yeah.
Well, it never made it on
Head
paper.
rattling. A lot of head rattling, I don't believe we ever took a vote.
Right.
Now,
We have a lot of head rattling.
yeah.
And I'm not prepared to take a vote tonight either.
Well, I don't, I'm not ready. But I just want you to know that, you know, I may go opposite to what you're thinking is until I hear something different.
Well, Dick, are you done discussing and cussing the septic treatment deal?
Oh, yeah.
All right,
Oh, that was
moving
just-
along.
That was just for discussion, no,
Right. Now we come to second public comment.
And our
Any
public's
public comment?
leaving.
Running out of public. Seeing none. Commissioner committee reports. Christine?
We had a Commission on Aging meeting this morning, one of our committees, and I brought this up to them and told them that I would be bringing this to the county board. Yesterday, I attended a seminar, a 2-hour seminar on Medicare. My husband turned 65 November 7th, and I signed him up for this seminar at Traverse City Senior Center to learn about Medicare. And I reminded him yesterday that he had to go to this at 1 o'clock, and he said, "No, that's why I married you." So I went, and it was put on, but my point is, it was a 2-hour, extremely informative seminar on Medicare. And it was put on by the Area Agency on Aging. And it brought back to mind two discussions that we have had. One was when we passed the county budget for 2012, everyone was aware that the Commission on Aging did not fund the Area Agency on Aging for this year. And then at a later date, the new director of Area Agency on Aging came forward and spoke to the county board and said, you know, we would like you to fund it out of your general fund dollars. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about $7,500 here. I think it's $7,503. Almost everyone in that seminar, well, everyone in that seminar that I attended, and it was a packed room, they were Grand Traverse County residents that were being served. And I told the Commission on Aging board this morning, and please keep in mind, the Commission on Aging board voted to discontinue all outside funding, aware that their dollars were starting to shrink. And also keep in mind that most of the 10 counties that comprise the Area Agency on Aging, most of the 10 counties, I think it's 70 or 80%, 7 or 8 of them, all fund that Area Agency on Aging out of their general fund. Grand Traverse County is unique by funding it in the past, out of Commission on Aging. But I told the Commission on Aging board this morning that I was going to bring this back to the county board and remind them that Area Agency on Aging has not been funded for 2012. And this board, in my opinion, and it's not a discussion for tonight because I know you're not prepared, and I have not prepared anything for you, but at Public Health and Safety, our next meeting, or Ways and Means, however you want to do it, we need to have a discussion on how we fund Area Agency on Aging, keeping in mind that if we don't fund that in some way, shape, or form, thousands and tens of thousands of state dollars are not going to come to the Area Agency on Aging. So I'm bringing it back to remind everyone that that agency has not been funded, and we have to decide. Commission on Aging Board's already spoken, but this board can overrule them. So I just want to bring that forward. Also, the other discussion that we had this morning was about the scholarship fund that we have. The Commission on Aging is already receiving phone calls asking that, or saying that that clients are wanting to cancel services because they can no longer afford them. The scholarship fund has approximately $6,000 in it right now. And we did have a discussion this morning on how to generate funds for that scholarship fund to bridge the gap for people who cannot, and I sat at one of our clients' homes yesterday for an hour with a Commission on Aging staff member. This is an individual who has a pacemaker, who lives alone, and who has a bad knee. And he's got a PERS unit. He's going to have to give that up as of December 31st unless he gets some kind of financial relief, because he can't afford to go from $1.15 a month to $15 a month. His monthly income is $463. So we are in the process of talking about how to write grants. We're doing benefits at the senior center to raise money. We are looking to raise funds. But what I also would like to bring to the county board at Public Health and Safety is a request for $10,000 out of 2012 contingency funds of the county boards for that scholarship fund, so that we can, since, please keep in mind, you all voted to raise fees, so that we can fund those low-income people until the Commission on Aging Board can get the funds in place. And we will, but we're not going to do it overnight.
Ross?
I mean, I don't really want to, we can talk about this for half an hour, I don't want to do that, but my memory of the Commission on Aging and that $7,500, which seemed like a pittance at the time, and quite frankly still seems like a pittance, was that the Commission on Aging didn't want to spend it and wanted us to pay for it. And my memory was, we said, no, you're going to pay for it out of your budget.
There was no formal action taken.
Okay, well, when it comes up, I will make that motion.
That's fine.
And we will pass it.
And that's what I'm
And they will pay it out of your budget. The Commission on Aging at the end of last year had $1.3 million with in their fund, in their general fund, $1.3 million with a budget of, well, they're spending about 2.5 or 2.6. So you're looking at a 50% fund balance, And by the way, I don't know how that story in the newspaper, I don't know what the source of the story was, but, if you read the story, your thought was, gee, all the fees got raised yesterday. And if people are calling now, it's because they think their fees just went up. When all we did, and I voted with you, I voted against it, but all we did was we sent it back to the Commission on Aging Board and said, rework them and bring them back, okay? So, honestly, you sound like Ralph Safradini, who said, oh, we're $350,000 short, why don't you give us the money?
I'm reminding this board that twice they have been told that there is no funding for Area Agency on Aging, and this board has taken no formal action. And
Because I didn't think we had to, Chris. I'm sorry.
We do.
Well, we will.
Ross, my motion at that meeting the other night was for the Commission on Aging Board to review what they were proposing, to take some other stuff into consideration, and, see what they could do to come up with the $350,000. But I didn't say anything about them bringing it back.
Right. Yep, that was the motion. That motion was they could go up to $350,000 in fee increases and use $140,000 in their fund balance to make up their $500,000 shortfall.
Well, my feeling is if there's going to be fee increases and, you know, that we should still approve them, I would assume they'd still come forward.
Well, we approved it essentially, but
Yeah.
we said you still need to look at it in the allocation of where those fee increases are.
And
that's
they
essentially
are.
what I was reading into your
And
motion.
they are,
Yeah, and that's
absolutely they
exactly,
are.
Good.
yeah, it's like,
Very good.
instead of going from $1.15 to $4 for the poorest people, you know, let's look at maybe $2.65.
They are
That was-
going to absolutely, and they
that
said
was
this
my
morning,
exact
they
words.
heard what you said, they're going to take it into consideration. My thing here is, I just want to remind everyone, Area Agency on Aging has not been funded for 2012.
Move to adjourn.
They need to be funded.
Well, it was my recollection of Dennis's recommendation at the time, because of the fund balance situation, that, and the board, I believe, agreed with Dennis to direct the Commission on Aging to make the payment.
I
Out
reminded
of
Dennis of this
their- out
before
of
he
their
left,
fund
and he
balance.
said, yeah, I know they have not been funded. I
They- they
reminded
sh-
him.
Well, we gave direction to the Commission on Aging to fund that out of their
Yeah, but we have
fund
not-
balance.
we did not formally vote on
We
it.
have not, we have budget approval, and we have not changed the Commission on Aging's budget. If you want to do that, I'm saying it needs to be done. Let's put it on the agenda and just do it.
Okay, do it. Put it on the agenda.
Okay, what else?
Anybody else? Herb?
Just notices, Nature Fest at the Conservation District is Saturday from 10 till 3. I would hope that everybody would want to come out to support the Conservation District and find out what all the different things that they're doing. It's a great way to be able to find out and to be able to support the Conservation District.
Nature.
10 till 3 Saturday,
Everybody going to the news?
Nature Fest.
Is there anyone else for committee
Hopefully your
reports?
mic's not on.
Notices and announcements?
That was a notice.
We got the Tattle Subcommittee tomorrow at 11.
Have a nice time.
And tell them where it's at.
It's at the third floor
Third
conference
floor,
room.
the,
Commissioners' conference room.
right. Okay, we don't have any need for a closed session? I'm looking for a
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Well,
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Welcome to the new batch.